What's up, Angela? Welcome in. What's up, Dimes? How you doing, bro? I don't know about you, Reed, but I'm so sick of this voting conversation with leftists. They literally don't understand what they're talking about, and it's blowing my fucking mind. Yeah, George, I'm thinking more of like, nationalism versus patriotism type of thing, right? I'm glad to hear it, Dimes. What's up, Carnage? I'm really hoping that a leftist will jump in. I'm back. Hey, man, I was doing the debates before any of these mofos were doing them. I'm back at it. I figured might as well give someone a chance to hop in there and have a convo since everyone wants to stitch and make little comments and take things out of context. So let's have a full-out conversation, then someone can jump in and say their piece. I really want some of these fake left cosplay communists to jump in and defend their position on voting, though. Do I have any guest requests? They're open, right? Right, Smitty? That's kind of what I'm saying. What's up, Ari? How you doing? Oh, you can switch it like that? Dude, there's so many things you can do. Didn't even realize that. Interesting. How you been, Ari? What's up, Manny? Welcome in. What's up, Marcelin Eagle? How you doing? What's up, Star Trek hippie? There we go. A little better. All right, let's see here. What's up, Dublo? What's up, Ali? How you doing? Should have the ability to... Are guest requests on right now? Just someone want to... Let me know if they're on, if you're able to jump in or not. Should be able to. All right, cool. Perfect. Let's see if someone wants to hop in then. I think they're pretty much facts. So, there is no God's not a fact in my opinion. That's like my belief. I think you'll have a hard time trying to like make a knowledge claim, right? Like establish that God is a fact. I'll concede that anyone can believe what they want, of course, but yeah, I don't know much about like monarchy from like a perspective of like someone in Norway or like England and stuff like that. But I see no need for it. It seems like, based upon my understanding, it's just pumping a lot of money into meaningless symbols that don't really have an impact on the decisions of society anymore. So it's kind of like holding on to fake, unnecessary traditions. What's up, Wild? How you doing, bro? Everyone who doesn't believe in God has the same ideology. Expand on that, Mr. F. Biden. Because that's not really true. Like everyone who doesn't like believe in your God or like God in general. Oh, you can change that too. See, there's so many things you can do. Oh, we got someone?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, man. What's up?
Nothing much. How about you? I
Oh, just
have
think.
a topic that I disagree with. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. So number 4, nationalism is weakness. I absolutely disagree.
Let's hear it.
Do you believe that somebody who is able to use their willpower to supersede their nature as a human would make them strong?
I mean, I'm not even sure that's necessarily like a cut or dry thing. I mean, so I hear your question, right? So would someone be able to like utilize like mental strength essentially to like outweigh like the conditions they're in or things like that or like their nature, I guess? Is that fair? Is
Not
that kind of what you're
not the
asking?
conditions, but like when you hear like how Mahatma Gandhi fasts or like goes on hunger strike, or when people do something that would kill them and they know that would kill them, right, or might kill them, but they do it anyway because of their own human will. That's what I'm talking about. Would that make them strong people?
I think it makes them consistent, and I think it speaks to true belief in what they're doing. Right, their actions are in harmony with their beliefs. So, like the climate activist, right, who self-immolated in front of the Supreme Court, would he be an example of this?
Sure, sure, probably. If you know his what he did matches what I say, yes, there'd be strength. It's I think human will is a sign of strength and sovereignty, sovereignty over yourself, like as a human being. Do you agree?
Yeah, it could be true. Like obviously, like if you have a belief, right, and you act in a way that is in line with those beliefs, that shows consistency, that shows strength of character, I'd assume, especially if like to act in the way you believe is going to bring some kind of negativity against you or things like that. Sure. Where are you going with it? I'll follow. I'll play along for now. I agree.
Well, um, my point is, if you are imposing your will over yourself, you are inflicting internal imperialism. And if imposing will over yourself is a good thing, then external imperialism, imposing your will over others, which is just how a state functions, a state which is sovereign, a nation which is sovereign, is just um, one person or a group of people imposing their will over a whole lot of people, which is a nation. Then imperialism is good, and then so is nationalism as a byproduct.
The first, I don't want to cut you off. You done or?
I am done.
All right, cool. So I kind of all right. So like, not a bad leap. I'll give you that. The first issue I see is like power dynamics involved. Right, there's a massive difference between an internal conversation where you can give equal weight to the various points, right, and then decide upon something and act in that way, versus externally doing that in a way that not everyone's going to have equal access to that conversation. If that kind of makes sense as a rebuttal.
Sure. So when I talk about nations, right, I'm talking about an ethnic group of people because that's what classically that's what a nation means, right? Like the U.S., it is a state, but there are multiple nations inside of it, right? Um, Nations historically have been based on ethnicity. So when I say somebody is imposing their will over a nation, it more so means that the entire collective will of the nation um, it collectivizes to make itself sovereign, and that is what creates a state. Right? When a nation of people declare themselves sovereign, so that is their will that they are imposing over themselves. When they become sovereign, they become a state. If imposing your will over yourself is good, then that must also be good.
Well, again, so is always imposing your will over yourself a good thing? So, like, I accept the premise to begin with, but let's like backtrack a little bit. Is it always good to impose your will over yourself? Like, is that an inherently good thing to do?
Yes, I believe it is. I believe that's our humanness. It's the reason we're human is that we can do that and other things can't.
But what if like it's a negative will? So, like, are there positive wills and negative wills to impose on oneself, or is just all wills positive in this sense?
Positive and negative. it's just a sign of, as you said, character. Good or bad, it is a strength. And that's the point.
So the example I'll give then is something I've talked about is January 6th, all right? And like this is not meant to be partisan or anything like this, but I've talked about how regardless of what one thinks, I can actually respect the people who crossed the threshold and went into the Capitol, not because I think they were right, or I don't think personally that they were based in facts or based in reality, but they had a belief that something tyrannical was happening to them, and they acted in a way that was actually consistent with that belief, right? If we talk a big talk in the U.S. about our First Amendment rights, the Second Amendment, things like that, and their ability to kind of counteract and prevent and fight tyranny, right? If you believe that an election has been stolen from you, that is a tyrannical authoritarian act, and you should rise up against that. So while I don't think the facts would lend themselves to their action, I do respect on some level the consistency from belief to action, right? There's a lot of people, over 50% of Republicans, who think the election was stolen, but most of them ain't doing anything, right? They're just crying from their couches. So while I can have respect for, we'll call it their strength of will and their consistency, right, which might lend something to character in some sense, I can't respect the action because ultimately, because the facts are not aligned with the action, it is an act of insurrection from some people,
I see.
right? So I think while you can respect the consistency, I don't think that we should just say that willpower all times is a positive. If we acknowledge there's negative will and positive will, then that alone I think kind of harms the premise and then the leap from internal to external, in my opinion.
So then I think it'd be in your best interest to change nationalism is weakness to nationalism is bad.
I'll give you that. Okay.
Okay,
Um,
we
that's
can
fair.
we can talk about that too.
A little semantics there, but that might be fair. I'll give you that. I'd agree with that actually. The way I see it, and let me expand upon what I mean by when I think nationalism's weakness, is I think that there's a reality that we don't live in a world that a country could be as isolationist as they once were, especially if you want to be a global power, right? And you want to
Sure.
dictate what things look like on the global level. And I think that there's a balancing act between, because I believe patriotism is fine, right? I think we should have a healthy love of our country. So let me pause before we all convolute on you. Would you agree with the characterization that patriotism could be a healthy love of country and nationalism could be a toxic love of country?
I think they are the same thing, and the dichotomy between them was something that didn't exist before somebody made a graph about it. I don't think it's a real thing. They're basically the same thing. There's no difference between them.
I think there's a lot of overlap, obviously, right?
The
Of course,
thing
there's
with
a lot of overlap.
I'm sorry. The thing with patriotism is that it's kind of, I think it's more so toxic because it says that patriotism is when somebody has a healthy love for his nation and he respects the good things and he hates the bad thing that his country has done. Well, the thing is you know I kind of feel when we say that we're patriots instead of nationalists, we delegitimize the bad things that have happened in the country, right? Stuff like the Trail of Tears and us not abiding by our treaties by the native people. When you are a nationalist, because it is your will that you impose, the collective will of the people, you kind of have to own up to it.
I think like I could get behind that philosophically. I think the problem is an application, like what nationalism looks like. Doesn't We don't see that come to fruition, right? I mean, I think we
Mm,
would. It sounds like you probably agree that American exceptionalism is a thing, right? There's a lot of people who kind of
it
buy
is.
into this idea of American exceptionalism.
Yeah, absolutely. But I feel that's more of a problem with our representative democracy, not anything to do with nationalism or our internal imperialism. I think that's just our tradition of liberalism, like classical liberalism within the country, that's ruined our politics and has, brought on like this Protestant individualism and, the consumerism and the American exceptionalism that we see today?
I think okay. So when we think about the American exceptionalism, would you agree that a large driving force that is kind of like the religious bloc, like you kind of mentioned it, right? So someone kind of like the religious aspects, the religious overtones, and how those kind of quote unquote values kind of cement themselves as American values, whether they are or aren't for some people. Is that fair?
Yeah, they're definitely like the legal system of the country, and the various systems that we have are definitely based in some religious undertones. You can't ignore it. Yeah.
And so I think when I look at that group, there's a vast majority of them who think that God has placed like the United States of America like in a special position on like a timeline, like we're a special state compared to other states. And so I think that that's a problem, right? And I know you're not pushing back on that because like I get I understand more your point now. Um, when you first hopped in, I was thinking that you were like a rah rah, like let's promote nationalism as a whole versus let's have an actual philosophical conversation about like weakness versus bad versus what nationalism versus patriotism, right? So a way different comment I thought we are gonna have. Um, but I would push back a little bit because I don't disagree, right, about your point about like kind of democratic representation and things like that. But I think they're all kind of intersected. And I think they all kind of come from an origin point that kind of, we'll say, pollutes some of these things. And I look back at the kind of concept of American exceptionalism and then religion, right? The idea of whiteness, right? Kind of some of the ways that impacts capitalism, right? And how that's going to impact your kind of decision making on resource distribution, which goes back to your point about the type of government. So I think they're all kind of intersected. So I'm not actually sure we disagree that much.
Well, actually, when we look at like the origins of nationalism, when a group of people become nationalist, and it might be a little different in America because we're a land of immigrants and we're more of a mixing pot than other nations, right? That are more ethnically homogenous. But in these nations, sovereignty and nationalism arises when they collectively pool their will to do so. The same thing happened originally when America was formed. No matter like the ideals that came with it, if you believe that a group of people coming together and saying, "Hey, we want to be sovereign because of this," right, is a good thing because they are imposing their will upon themselves and upon the whole group of people with them. And they're saying, "Yeah, we might get in trouble. We might go to war." For example, you had like some German tribes in Roman territory that are like, no, we're not going to pay tribute anymore. Well, that's an act of sovereignty. Most cases, when an ethnic group declares sovereignty over itself, it results in conflict with an overlord. You know what I mean? So
So
if you are
I'm gonna cut
against,
you off real quick. Let me jump in then. So would it be
sure.
fair to say maybe if I kind of tailor the statement, while maybe like such your point at its origin, so my mind went to when you're talking is like Ataturk, right, and the establishment of like Turkey and their and how they're doing
Yeah,
things and whatnot, right. So to your point, nationalism, Ataturk was clearly a nationalist, right, and I would actually argue that the things he did was conducive to building a stronger state that was necessary at the time for the most part. So maybe a better statement would be that nationalism has a purpose at some point, but as the timeline of your like nation or your state extends, the need for it might become less.
well, the thing is that I don't believe that you can have less. Once you declare sovereignty, you cannot just magically not be that, unless unless like the entire people does so. But then if that happens, your country isn't sovereign. Like look at Canada. They're technically, I don't know. Sorry about the Canadians here. They're not sovereign. Okay, they have their own elections. They consider themselves their own people. They're not sovereign. Okay, whatever they want to think. They're not as sovereign as the United States because their head of government is the governor general and then the queen. So no, they're not as sovereign as the U.S., right? Same thing in Great Britain. You have places like Cornwall, Wales, and Scotland, right? But it's an English queen who's imposing her will over the entirety of the Isle. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's just a story of how imperialism and sovereignty works. There's different levels of it, and you can't really go back. So no,
Not in
I
too
don't
great.
think you can be. I don't think you can be less nationalistic.
I'm not in too great of a position to push back on like the specific examples you gave. I don't know much about Canada or the UK in that sense. Um, but I think the problem is, so I think you can be if we. So I hear your point about what nationalism might have used to have been defined as, or what it used to meant before people try to differentiate between that and patriotism. But let's say we just accept that differentiation. Um, let's say so. Again, I would agree that if you're trying to declare sovereignty, you're trying to create a state, you're trying to establish your rights as a group of people who've determined that they want, their own representation and all that jazz. All right, you need some nationalism, right? It's kind of like the example I always use is like the contradiction for trying to shift. Like if you're trying to shift from capitalism, right? You're trying to move into a more socialistic framework. You're trying to move towards communism. Like it or not, if capitalism or capitalistic countries are going to attack you, you're going to have to tap into some of that productive power to defend yourself, right? And there's a bit of a contradiction there. So in the same sense, yeah, I'll concede that you need some nationalism to get yourself going. But once you become a power, or once you increase in strength, or once you find yourself where you're no longer the little guy trying to defend themselves or establish themselves, but once you've reached a point, which is no given, but let's say you reach a point where you're on an equal playing field, I think you have to start to consider some of the needs and interests of the other nations, the other states around you. Not at your own expense, right? But there's a balancing act between trying to promote yourself at the expense of others while still trying to maintain, like, somewhat decent relations with everyone and trying to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to kind of promote their state as best as possible without infringing on others. And that's a gray area, of course. That's hard to fucking find that balancing act. I don't know that anyone's done that. But hopefully you see my point there.
Yes. So I think right now we're going into external imperialism. Like before, we talked about internal imperialism, right? Which is when people collectivize together and they impose their will. They collectivize their will. That's internal imperialism. External imperialism is very tricky because there are cases. Well, first of all, it's a natural byproduct of being sovereign. No matter how small or big you are, ideas will cross. They'll change because that's just how trade goes. And especially now with the internet, the spread of ideas and cultures are huge now, right? So I think external imperialism is kind of just a byproduct of being sovereign, because even like historically, before we had high transportation and the internet, part of the conflict that arises when you're sovereign is that there are other nations, other groups of people that you can't necessarily trust, and you have to put your people first. And that's how this imperialism arises. Whether it, ends up being bad for the other group, if you're group A and you had to fight group B and take over them and have them make them pay tribute to you or something, you know what I mean? You'd pick group A, for who to win, and that's external imperialism.
Would it be fair to kind of reduce? My bad. If you're slow, my
Sure.
bad.
Go ahead. I'm speaking too long, anyways.
I'm not
Go
even
ahead.
chill, man. I do the same thing, so you're totally chilling. Would it be fair to reduce to just some of the realities of like tribalism then, just like on a larger scale?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is. That's where it arose.
Right. So yeah, I mean, for starters, good conversation. I do want to try and like give people time and stuff. So I think we do streams on Fridays and Mondays, dude. And so if you ever see a topic you're interested in, reach out to me on Instagram. That's where I can get messages, and maybe we can get you in on a more long form combo because this has been a pretty good conversation. Um, I still would push back, like in terms of like, I guess what I'm really pushing back on is the conception of nationalism for a lot of people within America, right? What they think of it and what that looks like with their behavior and some of their beliefs and things like that. But like on a deeper level, like I agree with a lot of the points you actually were making, and some of these are just kind of like realistic outcomes. Like no matter what you believe, um, if you look at like the Clash or like gathering of resources and stuff, and you got groups and things like that, no doubt about it. Um, Nationalism is bad might have been a better way of putting it. But also, I was expecting, some rah Trumpers and stuff to hop in here and,
Yeah.
defend America to like the 100th degree. So,
Yeah.
I'll give
Well,
you the last word, bro. Anything you want to hit before I?
I will say I do agree with you. I think American nationalism isn't well placed, but I don't think nationalism is bad for the reasons I gave. Um, can like the byproducts of nationalism be bad sometimes? Sure. But is nationalism itself bad? No, I think it's good. I think it's a good thing, and it's our greatest. It's our greatest sign of humanness. I think that we can give.
Cool. All right. Like I said, I give you the last word. So I appreciate you hopping in, man. I thought it was a pretty good convo. So take
Awesome.
care. And
Take
like
care.
I said, if you're ever interested and you see like a topic, because we usually kind of advertise what we're going to be talking about a little earlier in the week. If there's ever a topic you feel well versed in or you want to jump in on, we go Mondays and Friday nights. So just hit me in on Instagram and I'll link up if you want. So
For sure. Bye.
cool. Take care, man. Interesting. That was a way different combo than I thought it was going to be when he wanted to go at number 4. I thought he made some pretty good points. Um, like he definitely made me kind of walk back a little bit on some aspects of nationalism when it comes to like the creation of a state and things like that. We gave the example of Turkey and Ataturk in the aftermath of the fall of the Ottoman Empire. So that was a good conversation. I also would argue that his conceptions on like nationalism are probably a little more thought out and a lot more different than we're going to get from most people in the U.S. Um, I would argue that as things currently stand, still, I'm not like arguing with him anymore because like we already had that conversation. But when I was talking about nationalism as weakness, I'm thinking more about people who don't want to be critical with the United States of America and things that we could be doing, within the country and then also our impact on the globe. So that's a pretty good convo. See some comments hopping in. Yo, mods, don't be too tough on commenters. Like if there's a hate speech, if someone's being like derogatory towards other commenters, then get them out of here. But if they're just being mean to me, I don't care. Let them stick around. We love the trolls. So, Jackson, in the sense of the conversation I'm trying to have, I think nationalism is weakness. So, the United States is a global power, right? Um, so, at this point in time, because we have established ourselves, because we have a hand in so much that already goes on, I think it would be more conducive to maintain relationships by being someone who shows an interest in the prosperity of others and not just ourselves at the expense of others, right? So, that actually kind of harms your credibility and it's going to harm your geopolitical ability going forward, right? It's what makes some countries more receptive to the CCP in China, right? Because if you look at like the war on terror, for example, that's harmed our credibility as a superpower. That's harmed our credibility as a nation that's going to come in and help or do positive things, right? So they start to look to other powers or other countries that are coming up for trade, for infrastructure and things like that. On an internal level, I think the way I always put it is, and like I told him earlier, I asked if he thought it was fair, is I think that nationalism is a toxic love, right? And I think that patriotism would be a more healthy love. So I think of something like in terms of like abusive relationships, right? Like if you really love someone, it's going to be a healthy relationship where there's open communication. You're going to give them space to be who they need to be and have some independence on some level. And while there's going to be like constructive feedback and criticism and honest dialogue there, you're not just trying to mold them in your image or you're not trying to love them in a sense where they have to do whatever you want, right? It becomes toxic when you don't give them space to love themselves. And I think that's what nationalism, it kind of looks like in America, right? There's this image that a lot of white Christian Americans have of what the country should look like and what the country should act like. And if it detracts from that in any way, they think it's bad. And that's kind of the problem I see, right? There's no ability to look at the past, look at history, look at some of the wrong things that we've done that still impact us to today. Um, so I think it's just kind of like, to me, like nationalism in terms of politics is like blind faith. So yeah, progressing. Like I was saying, and I've missed some comments. I'm not trying to ignore you guys. So if like you think you had a comment, just hit it again. Um, but on number three, I've made it clear, right? Like I don't know if there's a God or not. I don't think anyone knows. Um, Jackson, I'll hear you out. Like what? I know you're in the comments, Jackson. So if you want to hop in and explain, go for it. But and no, George, I'm not familiar with the story. Um, but yeah, so Jackson says you're attaching many things to nationalism, which don't link. So I'll hear you out. Like what? Um, if you got time, and leave a few comments and expand on it. I'll try and check them out. But on number three, there is no God. Yeah, like again, I don't know, right? Like I'm not going to make like the knowledge claims. That's why I call myself now an agnostic atheist. Right? I used to say if I was forced to commit, I call myself an atheist because like I don't believe, and if I had like say like whether it is or isn't, I choose atheism. But I'm an agnostic atheist in the sense that I don't know, but I believe that there's no God. And specifically, it's more geared towards like the big three, right? Like I don't believe in like the Christian God. Like I don't believe in the omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient God because I think that contradicts with things like suffering, especially gratuitous suffering and free will. So Spider-Man's the real savior. Never was a huge Spider-Man guy, more of a Batman dude. And I never liked Superman that much until Man of Steel came out with Henry Cavill. I really liked that movie, and that soundtrack's gold. Man made all gods. Yeah, I mean that's what I think. I mean, and like I've talked about this a lot before on lives. I differentiate. There's kind of two paths that religion can take, and I vehemently disagree with those who think that their religion is a description. And what I mean by that is like they think that their religious texts and like their religion describes the universe. Like, I don't know about that. These are metaphors, right? So if it's a prescription for human behavior and human action, okay, I might be able to rock with that depending on how you interpret that prescription, right? Because that's what I think these all are. I think all these religious beliefs and texts and things are simply metaphors for human action and kind of the spectrum of like good versus evil, right? Chaos versus order, so on and so forth. Staunch atheist. I don't believe in ghosts myself. How about you guys? Y'all believe in ghosts? Boom, 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 boom. Jesus was adopted. Do you believe in sandwiches? I absolutely believe in sandwiches. And almost anything can be a sandwich. Batman is the bourgeoisie. Maybe. He might be. I mean, he's a freaking billionaire. So no doubt about it. What? Mr. Freeze and Mr. Freeze and Ivy, they're the good guys, right? Yes, a hot dog's a sandwich. Oh my god, that should be a debate topic. Sandwiches. A hot dog is a sandwich. That's facts. So, Alina, first of all, screw you for taking shots at my favorite hero. But number two, to your point, as comics get more woke and stuff, that's why they're starting to write stories where like Batman's lost his wealth essentially. So he's like no longer like the rich dude, like Bruce Wayne's like lost his wealth and things like that in some timelines because they're like literally they're like, wait, that's a problem, you know. And so they've tried to kind of tailor some of the more modern stories around that criticism right there. If ghosts existed, we wouldn't need brains. Not sure I follow that. Bruce Wayne is why Batman have a lot. Well, Wayne Industries is why Batman has a lot of villains. That's fair. Run. But no one cares what you think, Ron. Mr. Squid with friggin' rice. Consciousness without matter. Ooh. Eric, I'd have to think on some of that. That's an interesting point. The experience of God is real and common to the human condition. Well, what do you mean by the experience of God? Thanks, Bree. Appreciate that. Hillary ran a bad campaign. You're not going to get any pushback on me from that. I think, well, no one's jumping in. I think what really annoys me about number two, this voting conversation and like the leftist sphere, is just the exactly the thing. It's a personal experience. I think my problem with the voting matters conversation or the voting doesn't matter conversation is, for starters, some people are not genuine when they get on a platform and make videos they know is going to go out to thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, and they say things like, "Why should you vote?" question mark, right? Which is asking you a fucking question as the viewer. And then they make a bunch of statements to point out why voting has no impact, it doesn't matter, or it even plays into a system that most of us in that space want to change, right? And so it's not genuine to then backtrack and be like, "Oh, I'm not telling other people what to do." You absolutely are. It's why you posed the question to everybody and then made points in ways that would hopefully influence their actions to do something different. Because if you don't think something has an impact, you don't think people should waste their time doing that. You want them to go do things that are more impactful. And the problem is that way too often there's this like kind of either or false dichotomy, like either voting or direct action. And it's like, how about both? Right? Direct action is absolutely necessary. And what I mean by direct action is like sit-ins, boycotts, protesting, civil disobedience, things like that, right? There's nonviolent and violent forms of direct action, right? And I think direct action is absolutely necessary, especially because we live beneath what looks to be an oligarchy, and a lot of our democratic pathways are not as strong as they could be right now. But at the same time, on that note, what party's trying to limit your ability to utilize direct action? Republicans. Who's passing anti-protester laws? Who's passing laws to make cops protect these citizens in their response to protests? Who's trying to pass laws to make it easier to declare protests riots? Like, who's trying to limit who's passing laws to make it illegal to do sit-ins or to camp out at like state capitals and things like that? Republicans. They're literally attacking your ability to utilize the First Amendment to implement direct action. So is voting going to get you what you want on the federal level when it comes to Democrats putting in the legislation we want to see? Probably not right now, right? There's a lot of gridlock up there, no doubt about it. But can voting get you what you want on some level at the local level, or at absolute minimum, can voting help at least lessen the negative conditions that are trying to come into play as it relates to direct action? Absolutely. These things are fucking connected. And if you don't see that, you're not thinking enough and you're just spewing BS. So, yeah, David, and I agree. Like if I had to pick between the two, I'd say direct action is more important. Like we need to, because here's the thing, David, in my opinion, if we can't get people, especially people who have the ability to vote easily, right? If we can't get people to fucking vote, right? Do you think people are really going to take part in direct action? Are they going to take part in boycotts? It's like if you can't do the small things, I don't think you're doing the big things. So I am of the belief that if you can get people more involved in terms of voting, right, and kind of more, because if you're more involved in terms of voting, you're going to be more involved in terms of kind of trying to inform yourself, learning about the system, seeing some of the rights and wrongs and things like that, which then might lead you to further action. So I don't think that they are opposed, but to your point, we got to utilize voting and then some of the shortcomings that come with that to then push people into more direct action, in my opinion. So left, see, that's kind of the problem. Leftist tears fuel me. Is you guys don't really have like policy that you support. You just kind of have like a really negative bully mindset. So seeing people that you've been conditioned not to like or to think of as the enemy not like things is like a win for you. It's more about getting people angry who you don't like and don't respect than actually improving the country in any meaningful way. It's a really childish, juvenile way of approaching politics, but hey, that's America. What are we going to do? Some anarchists are, David. Some are. I think some aren't. I think there's a lot of people who can talk a really good game. Like anyone can say anything, you know? And it's not like my place to like assume what they are or aren't doing in their own time. But I know a lot of people who can portray themselves as whatever they want to portray themselves and send a message in any way they want to send a message, but it doesn't mean that they're acting in that way. One of the biggest problems with people, which kind of goes back to the conversation we're having at the beginning with that last guy, is lots of people believe things, lots of people say things, but are their actions in line with those things? Nah. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a Trump supporter that is not racist, but at minimum, and Joe Biden's racist. Make no mistake about it. Joe Biden's been behind or promoted legislation that has had disproportionate impacts on communities of color. So, like, this is not like a defense of Joe Biden thing, but only one of them taps into really overt, in your face, clearly racist rhetoric that emboldens the worst aspects of this nation, right? Only one of them's tapping into the Proud Boys. Only one of them's tapping into the KKK. Only one of them's tapping into outright white national groups. Only one of them's talking about how they love them and how they should, stand back and stand by and how there's good people in both groups. Only one of them's doing that. So people who have decided to still vote red in the aftermath of all of this have decided that's not a big deal for them. Like, that's not a turnoff, right? And so either you are racist or you just don't think racism's a big deal. I mean, not a good look either way. Yeah, there's a large part in that, George. What I think No Use has the numbers, but like something like 85% of people like have like the religious views of their parents or something like that. God made them knowing they would be aborted. It's in his plan. Yeah, exactly. Not everyone believes in heaven, so we're not going to govern our country with the Bible. Facts. So much for religious freedom, right? Bro, Elon's kind of losing his mind right now. Thoughts on 9/11? Like I don't buy into like the conspiracy theories on it, but that being said, I also think that our government definitely utilized it to further their own agendas and kind of push a lot of BS onto us both here and abroad in terms of foreign policy. Um, like Patriot Act, War on Terror, all these things. These are obvious negatives, and they utilized the image of 9/11. They utilized the kind of public sentiment in the aftermath to push some of that good old nationalism, in my opinion. So, is Big Joe in here? What's up, Big Joe? What's up, Earl? How you doing, bro? Yeah, dude, Elon really is feeling himself right now. You're not. Elon is losing his mind because he doesn't agree with you. LOL, spoken like real trailer trash. Thanks. I'm chilling. I can't kick this friggin' cold or whatever it is, dude. Like I feel like a lot better than I did earlier in the week, but like keeps kind of coming back a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, Elon made a PR decision. Yeah, I saw what he said about Democrats and Republicans. I mean, it's pretty simple in my opinion. Appreciate it, David. It's pretty simple, man. Dude's got some skeletons in his closet that might be coming out, and he's gonna land with the group that's gonna be more inviting to that shit. So most evil is or most yeah, that's just not it. I mean, we don't gotta mute him for his bad comment, but he's gonna address why it's wrong. I mean, George, he gives to both part. I think he's given more money to Democrats actually through his time. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of disingenuous to act like he hasn't been a right winger, you know. So, the abortion is murder thing is just really tired. Like, it's really tired. It's like really tired. Uh, Bush family is a bunch of dum dums who shouldn't have been in positions of power but were, and made really bad decisions and put really bad people into positions of power that really impacted us. Like I think George Bush is a fairly simple dude who doesn't understand some of the complexities of the world, who put really bad people in positions of power within his administration and let them kind of do their thing too much, right? Like the Cheneys and the Rumsfelds and stuff of the world. I don't know much about Papa Bush, so, but the Bushes aren't good. They're not good guys in this story, obviously. Right, David? Little bit of a slip there, huh? And people already are trying to create networks. Like there's different organizations and things that are trying to funnel resources to people who are going to be impacted by these things. So, should the left become more militant and organized? We definitely need to organize more. Always need to organize more. Militant to what end would be my question. Like, I wouldn't say yes or no. I just would ask someone, like, to what end? Like, when you say become more militant, like, what's the end goal in mind? What's the action in mind? What are the desired results in mind? So, armed? No doubt about it. Should the left be more armed? Should the left drop its, like, and this isn't the left, it's more of, like, I'd say moderate to, like, kind of centrists who, like, call themselves the left or liberals. But, like, gotta drop the anti-gun rhetoric, man. It's just gotta go. I say just fucking vote, man. Like, yeah, David Starr just hit it, right? If you want to create like kind of community groups that are going to try and protect people who are at risk of being harmed by like right wing terrorism, white nationalism, even the system itself, right? In terms of like cost and things like that, absolutely. Um, I mean, right wing militia groups are strengthening, getting more organized, becoming more active. So, but someone said, I mean, Tiff, look at the state legislature shift from like 2008 to 2020. I believe, and I'm not on the specifics here, but I believe like nationwide, if you could like accumulate all of it, the state legislatures were like 60 something percent blue, and that's flipped. Like it's done a 180 in the last 12 years or so. Republicans got smart, man. They got smart in terms of targeting like local politics, right? Trying to flip school boards, trying to flip state legislatures, which is why they're going all the way back in on the states' rights thing, right? It doesn't help that Nixon and Reagan and Trump got to place more Supreme Court justices than pretty much anyone, especially Nixon and Reagan. That didn't help anything. Republicans are playing the long game a lot better because they're thinking about the little things in ways the left doesn't do or doesn't like to. So, nice. That's awesome. We need more people to do that right there. Because, like you just said it, so many of these, especially like the local level, so many of these positions are ran unopposed. And so the biggest thing there is like, even if you can't win, maybe you can change what the tone of the conversation, what some of the ideas being kind of swapped around in that area looks like, right? Maybe introduce some people to leftist policy or leftist ideas that weren't introduced to those things before, right? At minimum, you can change what the conversation looks like in that locale to some level, right? At best, you can get in a position where you might be able to implement policy on some level, right? So, oh, and the guy you're running against gets shot, right? Oh man. Doesn't let you do. There we go. Bum, 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 bum. Thanks, David. This is one of my favorite comments. What's up, me today? I got a me today. I want you to stick around real quick if you don't mind. Give me like 2 minutes of your time. Are you pro-veteran? Like, are you pro-military? I'm gonna wait around for this answer. I hope he sticks around. Because I love using the unhoused as an insult, and not in that it's a good thing, obviously, but I think it's really telling of who someone is. Because you have to consider who the unhoused are, right? And I've talked about this before, but your unhoused population are going to be returning vets who've been spit out, forgotten, and not given a fuck by the system, right? It's going to be minors who've had to flee abusive homes and things like that. It's going to be minors who were forgotten by the foster care system, who are aged out of the foster care system, right? It's going to be people with disabilities, most of which can't get government assistance, right? It's going to be people who have mental health issues that can't get the proper health care that they need, right? It's going to be families that can't afford their bills and things of that nature. So, literally, when you utilize the unhoused as an attack on people, all you're displaying is that you don't care about veterans, minors, people who face domestic abuse, and the mentally ill and disabled. Just a hateful person, typically. Not good. It's not good to tell on yourself like that. Be better going forward, bro. David, the governor in Utah has kind of surprised me with some of the things that they vetoed and some of the things that they're doing. Interesting state sometimes. What's up, Dutch? How you doing, bro? Yeah, Tiffany's the Portugal model is on point in terms of how to handle like addiction and drugs and stuff like that. Elon's not exact. Like I think like the Elon lovers have like this idea of some like little genius who's like tinkering, creating all these things. It's like, nah, bro. He's just got the fucking capital to invest in other people who have good ideas and things like that. And then because of the way they market, right? They're not big on ad dollars and stuff like advertisement. He markets himself as the face of all these things, which is actually pretty fucking effective, obviously. Um, like Tesla's marketing is Elon Musk, for better or worse. Worse right now. Look at their shares and things like that because of his little game with Twitter. But absolutely, David. Page is God. I'm right here so I can prove it. Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure Elon's like fairly smart in some areas, like right, like when it comes to like the, whatever his area of focus is and whatnot. But yeah, the dude's not like some mastermind back there, like with all these like little inventions and whatnot. Doc TikTok. Our system can't support addiction management as it stands without a total revamp. Expand on that if you don't mind. I know you're limited in characters. Oh, I got a. Is there someone in here? Ew. Not this guy.
What up?
What's up, bro? What are we debating, fool?
Fuck, first off, I mean, I am God, so number 3 is obviously wrong. No, we weren't God. I'm not debating nothing. I just wanted to throw a little bit of insight where that fucking, I don't know, whatever that or me, whatever his name was talking about. And then everybody started talking about addiction. And you were talking about veterans and homelessness. And, you know, I actually have a little bit of experience with all of those topics. And I just, you know, for all these people who want to, oh, well, you just got to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and addiction is a choice and this, that, and the other. That's not always necessarily the case, man. And I was just going to share a quick experience, you know, like, so when I was active duty, before I got out of the Army, I was medically retired, right, due to injuries that were sustained in combat. And before I got out, I was on, I had 17 surgeries that I had to get right before I got out. And I was on like 27 active prescriptions at one time. And that ranged from anything from antipsychotics to antidepressants to full on like narcotic opioid painkillers. I had fentanyl fucking patches. I had fucking straight up Oxycontin, like the legit Oxycontin, fucking Dilaudid, all this shit, right? And so then I get out of the Army. And then I get put, you know, I'm waiting for VA shit to kick in, this, that, and the other. I'm medically retired, but there's this weird transition fucking point where your TRICARE isn't fucking working. So, like, you can't go to a regular doctor and you can't go to the fucking doctors on post, and the VA isn't fucking kicked in yet. And it's like a fucking 4 or 5 month period or whatever it was. You know what I mean? So I went from being on heavy fucking narcotics that were prescribed due to fucking injuries that I had and fucking pain management, this, that, and the other, to fucking nothing in a day. Boom, nothing. So, I mean, there's shit that you can do to, you know, to fucking take up the slack on that shit that just got taken away from you like that. And that's the thing. You can't just stop taking all those fucking drugs on the fucking spot. It's not, I mean, there's a good chance you ain't gonna fucking live through it.
Well, yeah, it's just not even good for you to do it, let alone like, yeah, the long term like possibilities that would result from it. But like short term, it's not even good for your health just to like go cold turkey like that.
No, that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's not. But then you become, you know, your body becomes dependent on those. So you are a fucking addict, right? You're basically a supervised addict that was made that way by the fucking medical system, right? And then all of a sudden, all that's taken away. Well, there's only one fucking route to go, you know, and that is street drugs, essentially. You know, one that starts with an H, and it is what it is. You know what I mean? Is it fucking right? No, but it's fucking the route that a lot of veterans end up going, because my story is not fucking unique to me in any way whatsoever.
That's kind of why it's so shitty, man. Like we've talked about this. It's like for a group that's so big on like the military aesthetics and trying to like portray themselves as like the same thing and claiming to support these groups, they don't fucking support them for shit when it matters. Like yeah, man. And I obviously like I think most of us agree like we're not most. A lot of us in this room would be like not pro military in the sense of like our country's decision making, right, and how that impacts people and stuff. But like regardless of that, like people go out there and through no fault of their own for the most part and come back in ways that we can't imagine, and we don't take care of them, dude. Like it's just like it's mind blowing in terms of how barbaric that actually is.
Oh, 100% man. And you know, so that's one thing I do want to touch on too, being that I'm on here with you, Matt, is like you're saying, you know, you don't necessarily have to support or you don't necessarily support the fucking military or the war effort, this, that, and the other. And I'm down with that. You know what I mean? I am 100% with you there. The thing that fucking always gets to me is, or I try to explain to people, sorry, I'm in like this weird, I don't know if I have COVID or not, but my head is just in a fucking weird fog for days, dude. I've been sick as fuck.
Oh, you're good, bro.
But no, I was gonna try to say is you can fucking not support the military industrial complex and fucking wars and like this whole entire thing, and you can support fucking veterans and the troops. I mean, those two things can exist. You know what I mean? And I had somebody leave a comment on one of my videos saying, "Imagine claiming to be a leftist and being a fucking veteran and telling people about it and yada, yada, yada." I'm like, that's not really the flex you think it is. You know what I mean? Because the military in the United States of America, in a lot of ways, that is, I mean, people's fucking way out of fucking
Facts.
extreme fucking poverty. It's the only fucking choice that they have. And it's obviously, I mean, it's set up that way. You know what I mean? Everything is set up that way. Hence why all the, recruiters, all that kind of shit, they all fucking prey on, poor, lower class fucking kids, that don't have a lot of opportunity.
Well, it's just silly because you just hit it there, and it's like what people can't like experience things over time that change their fucking views. like,
Right.
like so it just fails on multiple levels. What's annoying about that is you literally just hit it. You just hit it, right? So like as like leftists, we're supposed to consider like systems and their impact on individuals and things like that, right? But then you're going to ignore the impact of the military and its recruitment and who it targets, like you brought up, and like David says, starts in high school, middle school, and things like that. It's really selective. We're so selective when we want to focus on the system and when we don't focus on the system. So
yeah, no, it just always that should always stress me out when people are like, I would never do that. It's like, well, dude, that's showing your fucking privilege right there in a way that you fucking have never even had to consider, and you can sit on your moral fucking high horse of I would never fucking do that. That shows your fucking privilege because you don't gotta fucking worry about how the fuck you're going to fucking eat or live or fucking do anything. So shut the fuck up.
I mean, dude, we're all just, in my opinion, different versions of each other. So if I'd been you, I would have made the exact same decisions you made. Like if you'd been me, you would have made the exact same decisions you made. Like that's like none of us like none of us are special to the point where like if you just put us in different like shoes and different environments and different life experiences and everything, like we'd be different somehow. It's like, no, man. Like
Word.
yeah. Selective empathy is what I call it, Joe.
Yeah, that's a good phrase, I guess. Yep. My brain is not working right now, dude. This is the weirdest thing these last few days.
Oh, you're good, man. I was pretty sick myself, so I feel it. It's like kind of just like I'm not moving at the same rate as usual. Someone's left this comment a few times. I want to address it. Thoughts on Unitarian Universalism or liberal religion? I'm way more open to that, dude. So like to your point, I think Unitarian Universalism is one of the highest demographics in terms of support for abortion and the pro-choice position. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the three highest groups when you look at it from like a religious perspective would be atheists, agnostics, and Unitarian Universalists. So, yeah, dude, I don't care about your religion if it's a truly inclusive religion that leaves space for others to practice their faith. That like people really try to like actually act upon in a way that's like consistent and you just makes you want to be a better person for others. It's that toxic shit that we don't fuck with. So
Word. I have friends who are Christians that, like, in my opinion, they're doing shit the right way, man. If you're not using your religion to try to shit on the rights of other people and take away, rights and basic human rights from people, then I got no beef with it, man. Do what you got, do what you do. But the second that you start going, oh, well, my religion says that you can't get married because you're both men or you're both women, or I don't like the way you're doing this, or you can't have a fucking abortion, or you can't do this. When your fucking religion is fucking pushing legislation that's fucking taking away basic human rights from people, it can get fucked.
100%, like 100,000%, which is like the irony. Like they'll like so much of like the fear mongering rhetoric and like the Islamophobia on the right will talk about like Sharia law, right, and like restricting the rights and things like that. And it's like, motherfucker, you guys are more restrictive on some topics than the people you hate.
Oh,
Like,
dude,
Jesus
we're
Christ.
fully entering this weird like point of like Christian styled Sharia law with the American Taliban being, the GOP, which is fucking it's weird insanity. It's absolutely insane. And then on the other hand, it's funny, I spent a year and a half in Baghdad, and I dealt with a lot of Shias and Sunnis and all sorts of different sects of Islam. And I gotta say, honestly, like, yeah, there's the extremist side of people that is insane, that just gnarly. The same thing with Christianity, but with just normal, like everyday people that are practicing the religion shit, I was treated better by people that fucking complete strangers in a country where I'm running around and obviously I stick out like a fucking sore thumb. But I mean, these people were genuinely good people that were like, they would give you their last piece of fucking someone, which is the bread or the this or that, whatever, and fucking take you in. And it's not because you're a slave. They don't have to fucking do that. You know what I mean? They're genuinely good people.
Bro, so like, and David hit it. It's just xenophobia, right? It's like others, not tyranny. It shows you the power of propaganda, and I always use myself as an example, right? So I'm half Middle Eastern, right? My dad's from Iran, more Shiite population there. But even having family members who are Muslim, practicing Muslims, right, who believe in Islam, the propaganda and the power of American media to shape our beliefs and our views on this group of people due to their religion is so strong, right? That it's like it dehumanizes. It literally dehumanizes this group of people, and it makes us like believe these things that aren't true. And the point is, I myself believe some of these things about this religion, despite having firsthand fucking access to people within the religion, right? And it's like it just shows you how powerful like media can be on our cognitive beliefs and actions and shit like that. So
Absolutely. Matt, my fucking brain is going all foggy. I gotta go start taking some medicine and shit here. But
good, bro.
I enjoy our conversations always, dude. And thanks for throwing me on. And I'll be in the comments here. But
Sweet,
thanks,
man. And hey, appreciate you hopping in. We'll have to get you back on a Friday. It's been a little bit. Later,
cool.
Bro. Feel better.
All right, you too.
Big Joe's good people. You guys should go follow his page. He's a good dude. We've been TikTok homies for a while. Voting matters. LOL. In 2016, didn't you cry how it was stolen? No, I didn't. Do I know you, Bill? Are you making assumptions? I refuse to watch cable news anymore. I'd rather read a few articles on a story. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I watched cable news. Like, shit. Yeah, I can't remember. Like, I'll check out like Fox, CNN, MSNBC, like just to see like what they're running and what people are taking and stuff like that. But those aren't my go-to sources personally. So welcome in, Muzzy. It's Big Joe Berserk 6.0, I think. He gets banned a lot. MAGA doesn't like him, so they mass report a ton.
Hello.
Welcome in, man. What's up?
I'm here to open your eyes to the truth, brother.
All right, let's hear it.
Abortion is murder. God is real. You've been brainwashed by the Freemasonic agenda that has infiltrated the media and is pushing a new world order through satanic symbolism that is in our money, that is in our music videos, that is satanic people who are controlling Hollywood and the mainstream music industry. And these politicians are mere puppets on strings. The people who are really controlling these strings are the Rockefellers, are the Rothschilds, the Bilderberg. These people have high power, who have trillions of dollars. It's all rigged. You've been lied to since day one. The education system has dumped people down and created a society of sheep. And now we have people coming on here promoting killing innocent fetuses and mocking the Lord Jesus Christ and acting like they're so smart and they know everything and they're filled with pride. And you need to humble yourself, and everybody else in here needs to humble themselves and realize that you're not God. You did not create yourself. The universe did not create itself. When we look outside and we see the sun, the moon, the stars, the insects, the animals, the complexity of nature, the complexity of the human brain, the complexity of the human eye, even. Everything has a unique design.
So, home slice.
There must be an intellectual creator.
Home slice. You're not going to jump in and lecture people on humility when you're not actually interested in the conversation, but talking down to people for starters. All right, so let's start at the beginning. Can you talk about abortion without mentioning God? Or is your beliefs on abortion predicated on your religious views?
No, I don't have to talk about God, but I'm going to talk about God because y'all need Jesus.
No, it's a question, and you can either answer it or you can just leave. I'm not gonna. It's my platform. I'm not gonna put up with silliness. So if you want to have a conversation, we can do that. If you just want to rant, go to your own platform. So again, can you defend your position on abortion without referencing religion? Yes or no?
Yeah, I can.
Do it.
All right. Life begins at conception. Over 95% of biologists agree that life begins at conception. I can give you
96% of biologists believe on that. Also, 87% of biologists are pro-choice. So, is that cherry picking statistics?
Oh, really? Where? Okay, where's your source for that?
It's the exact same source that you draw that 96% number from. So if you actually go look at the fucking data and you look at it in its entirety and not just random sources which cherry pick, you'll find that.
Can you give me the source that says that life doesn't begin at conception?
I never said that. I literally said that the people that you cite as talking about when life begins, life, right, will also go on to say that they're pro-choice. So you point to experts for their position on a topic, but you don't look at their views in totality. That's called cherry picking.
It doesn't matter what their views are. Do you agree that
then why do you,
human life begins at conception?
Well, then why do you cite them at all if it doesn't matter?
Because I'm telling you that human life begins at conception. When you have an abortion, you're killing a human life. Do you agree?
A human life, sure. Someone with personhood, no.
Okay, but personhood is subjective. You can define. People have different definitions on that. It is like it's not like there's not an objective, truth to that. Someone can view personhood as someone that's sentient, as someone that has sentience. Someone could view it as, oh, you have to fit a certain criteria of certain characteristics. So, what do you define personhood as?
Well, that's the great question.
It's a philosophical term, so it's really like I don't understand like how people can just say that. It's really stupid.
Well, it's not stupid. So, for starters, you value human life. Do you eat meat? I eat meat, by the way, so it's not like a gotcha question. Do you eat meat?
No, I value human life. I value animal life as well, but I don't believe that animals are as valuable as human life. And I believe that what's the difference?
Well, what's the difference that distinguishes between animal life's value and a human's life value?
Well, I mean, you're asking me deep questions, and you asked me not to bring God in it. So, I mean, I guess to dumb it down, that we have the ability to rationalize, greater we have we can actually rationalize and implement laws and make rational decisions.
Exactly. So can a fetus at 6 weeks without the mental faculties required for consciousness do those things? No, they can't. Same as the animals can't, right?
Okay, but I'm not saying that. But okay, so whether or not you can rationalize doesn't grant you rights or doesn't grant you the right to life.
But you just utilize that to differentiate between animals and humans and the differentiation between rights and value.
No, well, I'm saying that that's not the only reason.
All right, give me another reason then. That one fails. What's the other one?
Because God created us in His image, and God created animals separate from humans.
So religion. So what if I'm Muslim and I don't believe in ensoulment till 120 days? We have freedom of religion in this country. Do you think your religious beliefs and your subjective religious beliefs are reason enough to justify my personal decisions? Just like I would hope that my religious beliefs are enough to justify your personal decisions, right?
I mean, you have free will, so you can do whatever you want. But I'm allowed to stand on my beliefs, and
absolutely.
And not only that, but I do believe that God, whether you believe in God or not, God sets there is morals that are objective. I mean, like people say that, oh well, morals are not objective, right? Well, that means that everybody can have a different viewpoint on things like murder, for example, or SA, and in their eyes it might be good. Who's to say that they're wrong if morals are not objective, right?
Well,
so do you think that morals are subjective or objective?
The problem is, I think that we try to chase moral objectivity, but the problem is with the distinctions between different cultures, individuals, and things like that. Morals are probably subjective. I think we try to create laws and we try to enact legal systems that point to some level of objectivity, right? I think that's kind of the goal. And then through social contracts and people kind of adhering to those laws, you're saying
Are you saying that essaying and murdering an infant is that's not like morally wrong? Like that is that not objectively morally wrong?
To me, those are morally wrong. Absolutely, yes.
You're saying no. You're saying it's up to interpretation. So you're saying if someone says that, oh well, I don't view that as wrong. I actually think it's good to kill babies and essay people.
Yes,
they're entitled to their own opinion, right?
That would be their personal morality. But then, good luck trying to implement that into an ethical standard.
Yeah, I mean, there's evil people. There's like different like cultures that have practiced human sacrifice throughout years. So what I'm saying is that it blows my mind how people think that, oh well, morals are subjective because who's to tell Hitler he was wrong, right? I mean, you're saying, oh well, if there's not a set in stone,
but you
okay,
just hit it right there.
This is 100% morally wrong. Like this is objectively wrong. Like I don't know how you just don't want to own up to that.
No, I actually agree with you in a sense. I get what you're saying, right? There's some things that you think should be universal, right? Like there's some things that are so ugly.
No, it is universal. Like... You just don't want to accept it. We all know in our hearts that killing or murder is wrong. That essaying someone is wrong. That wiping out a whole population of people based off of their religion and their culture.
So wrong. I agree with you. Ideally, right, these things should be universal because when you asked what I believe specifically, I agreed with you, right? The problem is people act contrary to these things. So despite the fact that we can talk about these things in a philosophical sense and say they should be universal, so something is not objective if not everyone toes that objective line by definition, right? The second you have people deviate from the standard that's supposed to be objective, it is no longer an objective standard, no matter whether we think it should be or shouldn't. And I agree with you that you are absolutely entitled to your personal beliefs, your personal views, your views on religion, however you want to think. The problem comes when we try to legislate our personal views onto others based upon subjective interpretations on things.
I mean, you can say whatever you want, like morals are not subjective. Like that is your opinion. Like I'm speaking truth. You're basing everything off an opinion. It is a fact that morals it is morally by definition subjective. God sets the standard. You don't. Okay. God says murder is wrong. God says stealing is wrong. God says lying is wrong. You can try to justify them and say, "Oh, well, according to my position, I don't think it's wrong because of whatever." It doesn't mean you're right because you don't set the standard. You don't set the moral standard. God does.
Let me help you
out.
But
we're getting into God again. Let's focus back on the abortion topic. You didn't want me to
let me help you out real quick. Do you understand the difference between morals and ethics?
No, not really.
And it's okay if you don't. Like I'm not trying to be like a. It's okay if you don't. Morals are going to be like your personal kind of interpretation of right and wrong, essentially, right? It's going to actually be subjective in nature. You would be wanting to talk about ethics for starters, all right? And that's just a semantics thing, kind of. I get your point, but there's a difference between morality, which again is an individual thing, and ethics, which is more of like a societal thing, all right? Again, I agree with you on your specific examples that these things. The examples you gave are morally wrong. Like these are morally evil in my book. The problem is there are other people who have different religious interpretations. There are some people who don't believe in religion. Everyone draws their morality from a different source, right? And in the collection of those moral views, you try to find an ethical standard for the society and the accumulation of those people. Why is your God any more important than someone else's God?
Okay, so you asked me like a really silly question. Like ethics and morals, like they go hand in hand. So like, I
just explained to you how they go hand in hand.
Okay, so they tie in together. So what's your point?
My point is you're talking about morality, which is literally subjective, like literally by definition. Right. So again, it helps you want to talk about objectivity, at least try to point to ethics is all I'm saying, which you might have a better path of. I'm like literally trying to help you. I won't do that anymore. My bad. You make your own points. So go for it. You had something else to say?
So ethics is the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. Okay. And let's look at the definition of morals.
I already gave the definition for each.
A person's standard of behaviors or beliefs concerning what is and it is not acceptable for them to do.
So a person's, right? Morality, a person's, an individual person. And we all have
Okay, but
subjective,
if morals are okay,
relative experience.
but not everybody has thought like not everybody has the same morals or like the same standard of ethics. Like everybody has different values, different things.
Exactly.
Society doesn't all have one mindset on one thing. Everybody has different perspectives and different
Exactly.
moral principles.
That's the problem. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, dude. See, you don't disagree.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. But what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter if you can try to justify murdering a baby, because at the end of the day, it's still wrong.
But if enough people agree, like a Nazi Germany,
In the same
for example,
way, you can try to
right
justify murdering a baby outside of the womb and say, you know what? Well, according to my
no
moral principles,
all right,
I
bro,
don't view this as wrong because they could say, oh, well, guess what? An infant does not have the ability to rationalize. Okay,
no one's
naming an infant has the ability
justifying
to rationalize.
no one's
right?
justifying killing infants outside the womb. That's not a thing for starters. Like they're like it, so it helps.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter if they say, oh, well, this is subjective. No, it is completely objectively morally wrong to do that, no matter what your view is on it. But anyways, that's aside from the point. The point is what. So you said that that what? Can you explain your reasoning again? Why it's okay to have an abortion?
There's three different things we can look at. There is the idea of bodily autonomy, right? And then we put that in connection with medical privacy, right? And then we put that in connection with the concept of personhood.
Okay, yeah, personhood. That's what I was forgetting. So, what is your definition of personhood? When does someone gain personhood, and how do they get it at that point?
So, I would look to conscious capability, and I don't think personhood is actually limited to people. And this is where I have my own contradiction of sorts, right? Because I eat meat, and that's why I'm like, I'm not using this as a gotcha on you because this would apply to me. But I think personhood would be anything that has a conscious ability to kind of make decisions, right? To kind of like conceptualize itself, right? To differentiate between like instinct versus like conscious choices and things like that. So, for example,
and you think a fetus in the womb can do that?
Not until about 22 to 24 weeks does it even have the capability to do that. To like have like.
So you're telling me that a baby that's in the womb at 22, 24 weeks has the ability to make conscious decisions, and it doesn't go based off of instinct. It has the ability to make conscious, rational decisions. Is that what you're saying?
It has the structures in place to do so. That's the line. So once you have the structures in place to do so, is when you grant personhood.
Okay, so now you're valuing the potentiality, not what it already has. So therefore, it does not have personhood until it's able to make those conscious decisions. Because now you just contradicted yourself. Because a life begins at conception, and it does have the structure. It will develop, and it does have the capacity and potentiality to make those decisions if allowing it to grow and develop. In the same way, a baby at 24 weeks, cannot make those conscious decisions, but will, because of the structure that it already has in the future. Yes, it should be able to make those conscious decisions. So you're valuing potentiality. You're not even valuing what it already has.
So let's say I concede that. Let's just say I concede that point. I'm like, okay, he's talking about potentiality. I still, again, think there's a massive difference between a life form that is a clump of cells that doesn't have a heartbeat yet, that again doesn't have the ability to have any kind of cognitive ability, right? But let's say you're right. Okay, potentiality, no matter what, because that ability hasn't come to fruition. That's why we still have the privacy aspects and the bodily autonomy aspects. These all come into play and they're all intertwined. So oftentimes in life, there's a clash of principles, right? For example, a big aspect of the whole pandemic debate with people was right to kind of liberty, right? And the right to life. So an example I'll use is like, let's say someone's driving a car, like you and I are in a car, right? And I'm driving, and let's say I mess up, like a car's coming in, I overcorrect or something, we go off the road, and it's a severe accident. And let's say that you need like an organ in the aftermath, or you're going to die, and I'm the only match for you, am I obligated to give you one of my organs? Like obligated? Can the state force me to give you an organ despite the fact that I might be the only match, the only possibility for you, in your opinion?
I mean, I guess legally, no.
Right?
Morally, you
Because
probably.
bodily autonomy, right? We respect people's bodily autonomy.
Okay, but bodily autonomy is a very, like, it can easily contradict itself, because just because I feel like my life is in danger or something like that doesn't mean I have the right to do whatever I want with my body. If I'm in front of a hospital, I could say, you know what, for my own, because of my only bodily autonomy, I have the right to do and you know, to govern what I do with my body. I'm going to smoke a cigarette in front of a hospital. It's like, no, you don't have the bodily autonomy to do it. That is illegal. You're putting others people in danger, and it's actually illegal to smoke like near a hospital. You know what I'm saying? Or if I go to a grocery store, I might feel like someone is out to get me. I feel like my life is at risk. You don't have the right to just do whatever you want with your body, and you know what I'm saying? You can't just harm other people, because
Yeah,
if
but
it
you're like,
involves harm,
but you're free to go smoke
if
in other
body
areas,
is
right?
harming someone else, that's not your own body, then you don't have a right to do that. In the same way, when people argue bodily autonomy, sure, you have bodily autonomy, but when it involves harming, or in the case of abortion, this is killing a human life. So you do not have the bodily autonomy to take another life unjustly, right?
So let me
In
ask
the
you
same way,
a
you go to a
question,
grocery
man.
store and say, "Oh well, I feel like my life is at risk, but these people are looking at me weird." You don't have the right to just kill someone just because you feel like your life is in danger.
A lot of states you do actually is the problem. Cops do. Like literally, like by definition, cops do. So that's kind of an
Unless,
interesting
no,
point.
you're allowed to use a proportional amount of force to defend yourself. I'm not saying you can't defend yourself. But what I'm saying is, in terms of abortion, unless the mother's like life is in like immediate danger, having an abortion is using an unproportional amount of force, and it's killing a human life. In the same way, like I could say, you know what, um, if someone enters my home, I can legally defend myself, and I can shoot that person. And in where I live in Florida, we have a law called stand your ground law, so that protects us, where we won't be held, legally accountable if that person ends up dying, because they made the decision to break into our home. And especially if they had a weapon or some sort like that, or a knife, they were coming at me, I'm allowed to defend myself using a proportional amount of force. Now, if a 2-year-old happens to get away from its mother and crawls into my home, I don't have the right to just shoot it right in the face, because that's using an unproportional amount of force. You get what I'm saying? So, like, in terms of a woman who is pregnant, she's just saying, "Oh well, you know what?" And here's the big kicker here: women are not getting abortions because they're afraid to die. The majority of women who have abortions do it out of convenience. They because it's going to
So,
affect
does
it's
a
going to affect
mother,
their life.
can I ask you a question? Does a mother who doesn't want more children, is that a matter of convenience for her, or is it up to you to force her to have more children?
No, no one's forcing her to have children. No one
Yes, you
forces.
are. No, no,
Let
no,
me
no.
pause. Let me
Yep.
pause you guys real quick. Let me pause you guys real quick. So political. I'm gonna give you about 3 minutes with him, and I got two more people want to guest in. I think Tiff is one of them, and I think Doc TikTok's one of them. So Tiff, you'll be up next if you want to hang around for about 3 minutes, and then after that, Doc, if you want to jump in, I'm gonna start moderating if you want to jump in. So go for it. You guys got 3 minutes. Try to be respectful of your time. Political, you're up.
So, go ahead. If you want to finish your point, I was going to respond to what you just said, but
Go ahead and respond.
so I mean, at the end of the day, like, yeah, as someone who's pro life, we're telling people that abortion is wrong, that this is inhumane, that this is unjust,
Mm-hmm.
and it should not be legal.
Right. Okay.
Whether
If
or
only
not,
you, if
but
only you
whether
were
whether or
just
not,
telling us. Hold on. If you were just telling us, that wouldn't be a problem. You can keep your opinion. You can tell us your opinion, but you can't force it on us. You can't make us live by your opinion. That's what you're trying to do.
You already conceded that bodily autonomy matters, where I don't have to give you an organ. I don't have to donate blood to you. So why does a woman have to have your spawn if she doesn't want it? She might as well consider it a parasite.
Okay, so like in the example he used, where like if he caused an accident where this person that was involved in the accident now is relying on an organ, yeah, I guess technically he would not be
technically, see, that's where it stops. No, it's not even technical anymore.
Can I finish my
No,
point?
but you're conceding the point without realizing it, right?
Let him finish.
Aren't you conceding the point?
I didn't even finish.
Political. I agree with you, but let him finish, and then
I'm sorry. It's just
so yes,
they don't hear themselves.
You're not legally obligated to give your organ because that is someone who is not like is already outside of the womb. Okay. But what I'm saying
why
is
a woman legally?
You will still be. There are still consequences for your actions. If you cause an accident, guess what, buddy? And that person ends up dying or is needing an organ, and they can't get to an organ. You're going to be held in a court of law, and that is going to what is that? I don't know the legal term with
a red herring.
No, I'm saying that would be like involuntary manslaughter. You would still be punished in the court.
Not at all comparable. Hold on. Is consent to intercourse consent to pregnancy?
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. If she's trying to use birth control and she didn't want to be pregnant, it is not consent to pregnancy.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
If I consent to get into a car, hold on. You had your chance. Hold on. You had your chance. Let me make a point. If I get into a car, I'm not consenting to an accident, and if I can take a pill to undo it, I will. Wouldn't you?
Okay, great. Can I respond now?
Answer the question.
He just asked you a question.
Okay, I'm going to answer. So let me respond without interrupting. Thank you. So when you are engaging in sexual relations, you are aware of the risks involved,
which is why there's birth control.
Even if you're using protection, even if the woman's on birth control, there's still the possibility of you becoming pregnant from it. And everybody in here, I'm sure, isn't, especially if you're an adult, you've been through sex education classes. You know that you can get pregnant from sex. It's not brain science, not rocket science.
Right.
Okay. So you did an action, cause and effect. And it resulted in you getting pregnant. So you should be held accountable. You should take responsibility for your actions, whether or not you intentionally meant to get pregnant. It doesn't matter. You knew the risk.
Absolutely. You're ignoring consent. You're absolutely ignoring consent.
In the same way, when I drive a car, I'm not consenting to get in an accident, right? I'm not
You're ignoring consent. Every time I drive comparing it to a car accident, first of all.
You're not letting me finish.
Hold on, stop. You got to rant for a little while. Let me speak. Consent to intercourse is not consent to pregnancy. Trying to use birth control proves they didn't want to be pregnant. Birth control doesn't always work, and Republicans are now attacking that. So what's next? How low do you want to go far backwards in 50 years of settled law?
You didn't finish my first point. The point I was making is that when I drive a car, in the same way when I get in the car, I'm not consenting to get in a car accident. I'm not consenting to lose my life from driving a car. But guess
it's
what?
A possibility.
Every time I hop in that car, even if I put a seatbelt on, I know there's a chance that I can get in a car accident.
And if you could undo an accident with a pill, would you undo an accident with a pill? Go back to my question and answer it.
It's a relevant question, Fly, because you just hit the point. You said, so despite the fact there's things we can do to try and reduce the impacts, you don't consent to an accident. But then, okay, if there was things you could do to change that outcome, would you take those opportunities? Yes or no? I think anyone would say yes. If you got an accident and could take something to reverse that from happening, that's a yes. And I'm not going to have someone grandstand. That's an obvious yes or no. So if you got an accident and you had the ability to take something that would reverse that, would you do so?
I mean, that's not really like a comparable topic. I mean,
you're the one that made the comparison.
We're talking about consent and possible outcomes.
No, because I live in reality. If you get in an accident, there's nothing you can do to reverse that.
If you could, you would.
Like if you have an unplanned, well, that's the point. We live in reality. If you have an unplanned pregnancy, there's things you can do to reverse that. Okay, a lot of guys talking. Let's let your most relevant voice speak. Tiff, if you want to jump in.
See you later, bud.
Sure, I
Later,
appreciate
bro.
it. So, Fly, I just have a couple questions for you. Do you believe a Zeph is a life?
Excuse me?
Do you believe a Zeph is a life? A zygote, embryo, or fetus is a life?
Yeah, it is.
And do you believe that life has ultimate sanctity?
What does that mean?
Does a life have sanctity? You were talking about morals and ethics earlier.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So then my next question is, then why all of a sudden, when it's in the interest of the mother, does it now become less valuable?
I'm not saying the mother doesn't have value.
I know,
I'm saying
but you're
all
choosing
life-
one over the
all
other,
life
though.
is
So
valuable.
my question is, why now does it all of a sudden become more valuable, or why does the life of the mothers all of a sudden become more valuable if both are lives?
What?
Why all of a sudden? You said that you supported, that you said it would be self-defense in the life of the mother. You would support an abortion in an occurrence of life of the mother, correct? I heard you say that earlier.
I don't really have a firm stance on that.
You don't have a firm stance on that.
Yeah,
because you did say that earlier in this conversation. But I think you just don't like the question. You don't want to explain.
I think it really depends in that, and like how. I mean, because with giving birth, there's always a risk involved. With surgery, there's always a risk.
We
involved.
established the difference, though. We established the difference. The difference would be in the life of the mother.
Yeah,
you
if the
either
mother was
support
100% going to die from giving birth.
Okay.
That's not an abortion, though. You do realize that that's a medical procedure. That's called what is it called?
It's still an abortion. The removal of a fetus, whether it's a stillbirth, whether it's a miscarriage, they are all considered abortions. Now, I want to hold on. I asked a question, you answered it, so then I want to ask the follow-up question. Why all of a sudden, when it's the life of the mother, what makes the difference? What makes her life more important? If you believe that a Zeph is a life, then what makes hers more important? Because I think you know the answer to that.
You shouldn't have to sacrifice, like, you shouldn't be legally, like, required to sacrifice your own life to save another life.
But I want to know what specifically.
Like if you are.
I think you're trying to obfuscate the answer. What specifically now? All of a sudden.
No, I'm answering your question. If your baby is in a fire and you're outside of the house and the whole house is burning down, if you don't, you can call 911. You're not legally obligated to, sacrifice your own life by going into a fire, a house that's burnt on fire to save your baby, right?
I think you're obfuscating the answer. It would be the same reason why if a building was burning and you could save 100 embryos or one 5-year-old child, you would save the 5-year-old child. You understand the difference between someone who is living and a Zeph. And that's why I asked the question, what all of a sudden now, if that is a life just like any other life, what makes it different all of a sudden in the case of a life of the mother? You are distinguishing the difference, so you know the difference.
To her point, if there was no difference, you would just play it out and whatever happened, happened. It'd be kind of like divine, like it would just be
and that's
played
why
out.
I said I don't have a firm stance on that. I'm a Christian, so at the end of the day, I'm not for any abortions.
I think you're flip-flopping now because you're stuck.
No, I'm not flip-flopping. I never said I have a firm stance on that. I said I would understand, yes,
You said it, and then you didn't have a firm stance, and then you said it again, and then you didn't have a firm stance.
To her point, so I think what would be helpful in conversations like this, Fly, is before Fly. Maybe other people are nice enough to not get interrupted. I'm not one of them. So I think what would be helpful is when you're going to backtrack off things that you state, and you're going to acknowledge that you don't have a firm position, and you're going to have to kind of work around questions that are being asked. Maybe you shouldn't have such a strong opinion at all on this. Maybe you should just be quiet more often and listen and think about it, because clearly you haven't thought about this on some levels. If you don't know, these are pretty like pointy questions that are at the heart of the issue, and you're flip-flopping. You are flip-flopping because you clearly stated.
I did answer her question. Okay, I said that you don't have to sacrifice your own life. I don't believe in human sacrifice. But that okay. So
but that's not the question I'm answering. I'm asking you.
I'm okay. So I'm not saying that you're putting words in my mouth. You're saying that because I don't believe in human sacrifice, you're saying that I think that the mother's life is more valuable. I'm not saying that the baby's life is less valuable. You're saying that. You're putting words in my own mouth.
But it's not putting words in your mouth. See, beliefs have implications, right? The things we say have meaning. So when earlier in this chat, and we both heard you, so you're not going to gaslight us, we both heard you say that in the case of the mother's life being at risk, you would support abortion then. You literally said it, okay? So that means that at that moment in time, you're valuing one life over the other life. You have now picked a moment within this conversation where you're choosing the mother's life over that fetus's life, right? And we're asking you why.
That's you. That's not. That's like I've never said that.
We all heard you. There's people in the chat saying they heard you.
No, I know, but you're saying that.
And Matt can also roll tape later because all of these are recorded.
That doesn't implicate that I'm saying that the baby's life is less valuable.
It actually does.
It literally does, because if you thought the lives were of equal merit, Go ahead, X.
I'm saying a mother should not have to sacrifice herself. Yes, I believe that both are equally valuable, but a mother should not have to sacrifice herself to save that baby because that's human sacrifice. I don't believe in human sacrifice.
All right. Well, I appreciate you.
And not only that, I don't even understand why you're bringing that up. That's like a small percentage of abortion. So if that's really like the reason why you're trying to promote pro-choice, that's really sad and pathetic.
I have many reasons why I promote it.
All right,
but I'm addressing.
We're not. I'm sorry to cut you off, Tiff, because you should be the predominant voice here. But what we're not going to do, bro, is you're not going to throw out insults when you have no ability to actually stand on what the fuck you're saying. So adios, muchacho. All right, Tiff, the floor is yours.
Well, I was listening to the conversation, and I'm a note taker, and so I had already typed it out that he had said that. I knew he said that. Some of the other questions I had for him is if embryos are alive, why can they be frozen if an embryo is actually alive? And
that's a good question.
That was going to be my next question is like, how could something be alive if it can be frozen? And another thing that he brought up initially was the legality, which I usually like. That's what I would like to pin it to, because I think that anytime you introduce religion into it, like the Jewish faith believes that life begins at first breath, are we now going to take their religious rights away because our religious rights disagree? In the Muslim faith, I believe you're probably more familiar with the Muslim faith, but they believe in abortion up to a certain
installments, 120 days, I believe.
Okay. So we're infringing on the religious rights of other people when we do that. So I like to stick to the legal argument, and really our Constitution already acknowledges, personhood, in my view, in the 14th Amendment, when they acknowledge a citizen as somebody born or naturalized.
100%. Like, you just hit it too. Like, literally the 14th Amendment says it like verbatim, what you just said. So I think I think you'll agree, obviously. The problem is, like, no matter what prong you want to take, if you want to talk, like, in terms of legality, if you want to make it a philosophical conversation on personhood, if you want to turn it into a conversation about privacy or medicine or science, it doesn't matter what avenue you take. It doesn't work at any point, in my opinion. So
I agree. There's basically, I think I posted it earlier in the chat, I've seen the legal issue, the religious issue, the moral issue. But it seems like whenever you start asking questions to challenge that, like that's when there's backpedaling and backtracking. So that's why I was asking the questions in parts, because I kind of wanted to nail it down just one more time before I asked him that, because I kind of knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, my bad. If I had known you had a few more questions lined up, I might have let him stick, but I can't handle
It's
the ad hominem became even like, because he was kind of grandstanding at first, but then he wants to like start calling things pathetic. It's like, you didn't have that same energy earlier, like, so I don't like that. So what's
well,
up,
and he
Iron?
was assuming that was my only
Hey,
argument.
I had a question for I got to. So
Sure.
no, mine was I had a friend who and this happens. It's not common, but it does happen. Had a issue with his hip, right? And he went in to have some scans done, and it turned out that he had been a twin his whole life and had a symbiotic twin in his hip, and like they removed it because right, it's not a person any more than a fetus or a zygote or any of that is a person. A person is able to articulate their wants and needs. And if you can't, I mean, at some point you gain personhood, and past that, you have those rights. But I don't think you have those rights as three cells. I don't think that at any point, you see what I'm saying? Like, there are other instances where you could say that's human, that's DNA, that's a life. By this law, he couldn't have that removed. He'd just have to suffer with that for the rest of his life because that's another human being.
I also had a follow-up question for him when you were asking him about animals, like what would make him value the life of a human over the life of an animal. And I actually recently just learned this. There's a ton of animals that are able to self-abort in different types of situations. And the question that I had for him was, if the argument is, well, we're more evolved, we're more sentient, self-aware, whatever you want to call it, would he also then support if another being evolved out of humans for them to view us as the same, like less than a life? Does that now all of a sudden become the argument, well, because this being is more sentient, this life's no longer of value?
I didn't know that.
What?
I didn't know that there's animals that could self-abort, essentially.
There's animals that can self-impregnate.
Yeah, there's also animals there. I think it's some sort of hedgehog or something maybe that holds the record for being able to pause pregnancy for the right conditions as well. So for up to 2 years. But I had recently kind of learned about that there's, and it's mostly mammals. If they don't have the right requirements, such as food, shelter, things like that, or in like gorillas, they basically have I think it's like a 3-year fertility cycle or something, where let's say a new male comes into the community, they will self-abort and also unalive their own babies, because that male will come in and do that if they don't. So that's how it's taken care of biologically. So to say abortions aren't biological, they are. And over the course of history, we've been able to self-abort for a long time. So he also brought up religion, which I believe in Numbers 5:11 through 31, it gives a prescription for abortion, which if you look back at the times, so bitter waters was actually Selfion, which no longer exists, but it was a natural abortifacient used for hundreds of years. We have probably always had the ability to abort, but we have just evolved to where we are now. And this is how we are choosing or having the ability to do that, because animals do it in biology all the time.
I actually showed that passage to my very far right father the other day, and then suddenly he didn't care about his religion. That wasn't what it was about.
I mean, but like we saw it here, they'll flip between different things. That's why I got so upset at the biology thing, because like you just cited biology. It's like, don't talk about biology, bro, because you're obviously not actually interested in the views and the reality of biology. You're just going to cherry pick one aspect of that. I mean, and plus, when he's saying they're not called abortions, and correct me if I'm wrong, someone, but aren't miscarriages considered spontaneous abortions, like medically? Like, that's the
Yes.
terminology?
That's what they are. Yeah.
So,
Yes. Whenever I was stating that, he had cut me off, but the definition of an abortion is the removal of a fetus. So that could come as a result of a miscarriage. That could come as a stillbirth. So, for example, I had a family member who was 5 months pregnant. Unfortunately, she had a heart condition in which she had to have emergency heart surgery, and she was informed that that was going to result in the demise of her fetus. And afterwards, she had to get an abortion, and that is on her medical documentation. So that's frustrating for me sometimes, because one of the things I've been extremely disturbed by during this whole conversation is the lack of knowledge, specifically from men. And I'm not shitting on you guys, but I'm just saying, in the conversations that I've had, they don't know a lot about female anatomy. A lot of them weren't aware that abortions are, there's a lot of situations where a woman would need an abortion. They weren't aware of things like ectopic pregnancies. A friend and I one night sat in a live, and we gave guys just a basic anatomy quiz in the chat, and it was disappointing and frightening, frankly, to see the lack of knowledge of even, a woman's basic biology, basic anatomy.
I remember that live.
Oh yeah, you were there.
Coco did it.
And in here, yep. But as far as you shitting on men, I wouldn't blame you a bit for shitting on men in general, because men are shitting on you.
Well, and to your point, go ahead. Sorry, my bad. Go ahead, Tiff.
I was just going to say, I think the idea that they have in their head is we're so radical and we're just like demonizing all of them. And that's not the case. We just want the same rights. And it feels like one of those arguments where it's somebody telling you, you want more, you want all these things. They do this to the LGBTQ community too. You just want more. And it's like, no, we actually just want the same. You just think that's a radical idea that we should ever want the same.
Yeah. I've heard people say, oh, and that's too much if they have equality. And a person said, yes, equality for the gay people is too much for me. Like, that was a Republican Trump person saying it.
I had a cousin personally expressed to me 2 years ago that he didn't think women should vote. We don't talk anymore.
Well, you just hit it. I mean, there's been like a GOP Congress people or like in the state legislatures who've literally acknowledged, have you ever thought about what would you do if you were pregnant, or how much have you considered this topic? And if you look at public opinion, obviously women think about this a lot more than men, which goes back to what I was trying to tell him. It's like, bro, you got really hard opinions on this, but you are flip-flopping and you're jumping around and you're admitting you don't know. And it's like, exactly, you don't know. So like, maybe just start there. Like, well, yeah, that's okay.
They have such strong convictions for a choice that they're never going to have to make. And it's like, I commend you, non-uterus person, for having such strong opinions of what you do with your body. Great, you can choose what you do with yours, but I'm free to make my choice because of bodily autonomy. And that's the thing. They think that because they made that noble choice for them, that they can enforce that upon us all. And it's like, you don't even have the option to gestate, so please keep your opinion to yourself. And please don't tell me what to do with my choice.
So I kind of come from that world. I was raised fundamentalist, and I can tell you right now that none of the men in that society would ever allow the state to step in and tell them what they can do. It's such an offensive thought to those people. They are being completely disingenuous about that argument. It's not even close. They can grandstand and say that they believe that, but there is no way that they would subjugate themselves to a couple of cells in their body. There's no way.
No, they wouldn't. My senator had said, he was like, I'm pro-choice, and even if a person's raped, he's like, I just can't let them have that option. Some even said that a woman's body will shut down if they're raped.
Yeah. But that's the thing, and that's the frustrating thing for me, is because I am open to hearing their logical arguments. I am maybe even open to me, legislation is fluid, and I will take better over nothing at all. Like, I will. But that's not what they're doing. They're framing the argument very differently. You know, for people that want to sit there and criticize us for not being bipartisan and for going too far left and being too woke and all this other shit, you know, they have gone to the extreme. They haven't tried to build like any type of consensus or try to compromise at all. They went straight for the jugular, and they went for the most restrictive possible laws that they could. They went straight for the right to privacy, which impacts other laws as well. So they come from an extremist point of view, asking for compromise, which is crazy to me. And then they also, you know, want to present these nightmare scenarios as if they exist. So it's a user called Awakening America, I believe. He was on our live the other night, and I've seen him make, actually, Matt, you got brought up on my live. Didn't you have a interaction with that person? Like last week? Awakening America?
Nothing comes to mind, but
I could be mistaking it.
They might have had an interaction with me. It doesn't mean I had an interaction with them.
Oh, well, that's true. I actually do think he did make a video about you, and that's maybe where I saw it. But he came into my live, and he wanted to nail me down into a position where he was saying, okay, so you agree that, you know, cellular life is the building blocks of life. That's the point we had gotten to. And he said, okay, so you would be okay with, or would you be okay with a fetus entering the birth canal, and then, I don't want to say anything that's going to get you in trouble on live, but unaliving it in the birth canal. And the thing that's frustrating for me about that is, why are you presenting a nightmare scenario that doesn't ever happen? Like, aren't we having a logical, realistic conversation? But that's the place that you want to go, because you don't have the logical argument. You have to create these nightmare scenarios so you can frame the argument around that instead of actually having a conversation logically.
Well, that did happen kind of in Ireland. A 30-year-old dentist, she was having a like sudden miscarriage, and the fetus was stuck in a place where it couldn't go, but it was dying, and they were like, we need you to perform an abortion before I go septic. And the doctors in Ireland, they're pro forced birth, and so they didn't give her the abortion. The fetus died. The fetus went septic. The fetus made her septic, and she died. And she lost children, husband. And she was a dentist, and she died. That's what they want. They don't see that because they don't understand that, because they don't get the nuance of bodily autonomy or pregnancy. It's deadly.
And it doesn't affect them, so they have the privilege of ignoring all that.
Yes.
Well, I just thought it was.
They know us. Oh, sorry.
I just think it's super interesting that they want to have that conversation, but definitely we had so many people drop from that live, like, I don't know, maybe it was a week ago that I did that live that he popped in there, that just dropped every time, especially when the biology question came up, because that's a situation that a lot of mothers are in now. Look, we don't even have formula for babies. You want a woman to bring a life, as you call it, onto this earth with no way to feed, support, and promote the general welfare of that life once it's here. So it's not exactly conducive conditions conducive to, having a baby and then taking care of that baby. And so you're asking them to choose to bring a life into this world in conditions that they can't support it.
Yeah, and it costs money to have birth. Even if you have insurance, it can cost you thousands of dollars. And right now, there's actually a woman right now, she is pregnant. She has 2 children, and she has brain clots in her brain, and she needed to get an MRI done, but the hospital was saying, no, we can't give you the MRI, because the neurologist was like, I need an MRI. Yeah, you saw that one? Yeah. So yep. The OB was like, no, you can't have an MRI because of the fetus. It might not make it because of the contrast. She had to go to another hospital. She was like, I love this fetus. I want to have this pregnancy, but I want to live for my 2 children. So she went and got her MRI. But she was having trouble speaking and seeing because of the blood clots.
Well, and most mothers would choose that. That's the personal example that I give all the time. I have a 7-year-old, I have a 9-year-old. I fortunately have my tubes tied, and I live in a pro-choice state. I live in Illinois. But let's say that I didn't, and let's say that I didn't have my tubal ligation, or it failed, or something to that. If my doctor told me, look, you're too old to be carrying a fetus, and the chances of you losing your life are great. My choice is going to be to stay here on this earth with my 2 children that are here, and I'm going to obtain an abortion, a safe medical abortion, wherever I can, in order to stay here with my kids.
Yeah, and I live in a state where I don't have the rights. I have the 2 weeks after a missed period to find out that I'm pregnant. I'm in a long-term committed relationship, and I have an IUD. But because of my birth control, which is 99.9% effective, I wouldn't know I was pregnant until I was too late for the SB8 law. So I would have to leave the state without anyone knowing to then go get an abortion, because we try everything we can up to the point of not sterilizing, because we do want to try to have children in the future, but we want to stay and be a married, unchildren people, because we can't have a child at this point in our lives. It wouldn't be fair to a child.
Well, and it's also extremely classist, these laws, because they're only going to affect poor women and women of color. I am in a situation where if I really needed to, I could travel to another state and get an abortion, a safe abortion. But that's not going to be the case for women that are in bad financial situations, or that, of course, then, just like everything else that has to do with poverty, disproportionately affects people of color as well. So it's not going to impact me, but it is by design, I believe, personally.
It is,
I believe that is by design, because these politicians, these dirty politicians, will still get their mistresses abortions.
Yeah, the number one reason for people that are seeking abortion not to save their life are because of financial reasons, because they say, I already have children, we used birth control, it didn't work. And a lot of people that were getting abortions already had kids and already had birth control that failed. They're not irresponsible, and pregnancy is not a punishment. But yet people are claiming it is, and people are saying that if you have sex, therefore you consent to pregnancy. And that's where we're going, no, this is my privacy.
And also at its root, it's just not going to save any lives, because women are going to have abortions anyways. They're just going to have unsafe abortions and back alley abortions. And then we're talking about a potential life and a life. So it's not going to save any lives. It's a net negative.
They really should go back and read the stories of women before Roe. There was a doctor, he said we had a septic ward of pregnant people that were dying. And he said a woman was denied an abortion. She went at home, shot herself in the uterus, and came back. She died.
Well, that's why it's, I can't have this conversation with most of them, like, in a sense, because, like, something I always ask, sometimes I didn't do this time, but because he just came in like a whirlwind, but I'll try to frame it with, so we all agree that ideally reducing abortions is probably right. I'll just frame it like that, because the reality is the thing and what comes in tow with that is not going to decrease pregnancy, not going to decrease the number of abortions. So what I think Tiff just said, all it does, like you said, is it's just going to lead to more unsafe abortions, which lead to more unaliving for mothers, right? Still going to have the same amount, if not more, abortions being performed. So it's literally an anti-life position when you actually apply it, all the policies that come into fruition with it. So,
well, not to mention,
isn't it interesting that none of the legislation addresses what happens prior to the pregnancy, right? It's not like sex education in this country is adequate. It's not like we provide the ability, to walk into a pharmacy and get a Plan B, or be able to get birth control, free pap smears, and things like that. It's very restrictive. So if they were serious about further decreasing, because it was already decreasing a lot, abortions in this country, if they were serious about it, then they would legislate to fix that issue before it came an issue.
Yeah.
Also, how do you enforce that kind of rule? I mean, the invasion of privacy that's going to be necessary to investigate a miscarriage that may have been, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be a terrible. It's going to be a terrible law to enforce.
Yeah, the investigations are happening now. People are going to jail.
And it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And these are also by the way, the same people that, don't want to even register their firearms. They don't want to have to submit to a
Good point.
psychological evaluation, beforehand. And so they care about their privacy then,
Yeah.
but not a woman's privacy when it comes to her own medical and reproductive rights. They're also the same people that support stand your ground laws and capital punishment. And so really what's funny to me is these same people that support specifically stand your ground laws, because the law says that if you feel as though you are threatened, so they won't support a woman who feels threatened by a pregnancy, either through financial means, medically, or her own life. But they don't understand the correlation when it comes to stand your ground laws. So they're like, I'm just protecting myself. Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, those stand your ground laws, some of them, especially the ones in Texas, you can protect your property that way, your financial property. So why can't you protect your financial future from an invader into your uterus? It's the same thing.
Well, they're also the same people that go, I don't believe in mass mandates. I don't believe in forced organ donation. I don't believe in school lunch programs. I don't believe in school funding. They're very anti-child, but they're only pro-fetus because they want to remove privacy and they want to subjugate women. This is a power grab by the patriarchy to put women into poverty, women and people with uteruses.
I believe it's to cultivate a worker force, a poor worker force that has no options. It's kind of like a supply and demand thing, right? If there's, 10 of us and there's 10 jobs available, they're going to have to pay us pretty decent. But if there's 100 of us vying for 10 jobs, then they can get away with paying us far less. And they just want to crank out workers.
They don't remember their history. They don't remember Romania Decree 770. They don't remember the complete destruction that happened to Romania because of Decree 770, which banned and made illegal all abortions with high punishments. So then there was a ton of children that were born, and then those children grew up and they couldn't find work, and they overthrew the government. Romania Decree 770.
It's also white supremacy. They see them census counts and they're afraid.
Yeah.
But I think this particular ruling goes a lot further than that. It ignores the entire Ninth Amendment. Nobody talks about that, but they ignore the Ninth Amendment like it doesn't exist. They make the argument that you only have the rights that the government says you have, and that's backwards of the way it should be. The government only has the rights I say it has. That's how that works.
It takes away our unenumerated rights. You're exactly right. That's exactly what it's undermining our unenumerated rights.
Yeah, which is a power grab that is astronomical. People don't realize what they can do with that. If the government says you're not allowed to do something from this point forward, you're just not allowed to travel, anything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Matt, you sort of hit on the racial aspect of things, or the idea of the birth dearth, right? I think that's because minority people have fought so hard for their rights already. They really we haven't had to fight as hard. They already know how to do this, and they are not going back. Like they are not going back. And I really believe that they're sort of using that famous saying by LBJ, if you give a man someone to look down on. They have convinced white America that they have someone to look down on, and therefore they should keep voting for policies like this. And then they root it in, well, we're out here saving lives, and this is the moral thing to do, when really, the idea behind it is just to create mind-numb workers who think they're a little bit better than somebody else.
Well, they're already planning how to squelch out the indigenous and the black population with the school-to-prison pipeline, and with the indigenous one right now, they're going after the Indian Child Removal Act. They're trying to get rid of it, which is what protected indigenous children from being taken from their reservation and put into other homes. They're trying to get rid of it. They're planning to do an extermination and a subjugation.
It's the dehumanization of any political opponent. It's what fascists do. It's the base plague.
Yeah.
And we're watching it
unfold. That's why they're the most scared about. I think that's why they are the most scared about losing the white majority is because people of color, indigenous people, they've already fought for hundreds of years now. And a lot of us, to be honest, are just getting into some of these fights recently. And so they know those people are not going. But if they can try to convince us that we're maybe, they'll give us just a little bit more crumbs, then we will do their bidding. And I hope that people really consider that, when they consider some of these issues.
Yeah, we're slowly boiling in the water, and a lot of us are not realizing that we're slowly being boiled to death
because they're distracting us with things like they're distracting us with things like gas prices, all this. Okay, so this might be a little conspiracy theory here, but all this economic turmoil that's going on, that's the leverage that super wealthy people have, and they're using it, like gas prices. The price of oil, the price of gas aren't mashing up. Like somebody is price gouging, at least to some extent there, and they're doing that to benefit themselves in a way so that we reelect the people who will further do this sort of thing. It's like they're all in cahoots together, in my opinion. That's all working towards a goal. They see something that they're scared of. You actually made a video not very long ago about it, where you said that maybe it wasn't you, it might have been Cro-Magnon, where he was talking about what they would do if they saw a worker revolution. I think they did see it, and I think it scared the crap out of them, and they're doing everything they can to put the workers back in their place, because you have to go to work if you can't afford gas, and you have to, I think it's all kind of, I think there's more going on than we see.
There is.
And I think taking away our unenumerated rights is a big part of that.
Maddie, what were you saying, though?
Who?
You, Matt, what were you saying?
Well, I was going to say, I think that's actually part of the problem, is like, so when you look at like how we split up this country and its decision making, we kind of view it, left, right, which isn't really accurate as it is, right? Liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. For a long time, the two parties did kind of work hand in hand in some part, right? Over like these really important key areas that a lot of us don't agree on, right? The issue is a lot of us, and so someone said that, it doesn't seem like we understand that we're like kind of like boiling to death or whatever. I think people do, actually. The problem is we just, as a group, can't agree on who's turning the knobs, right? There's a lot of people that want to point to things that aren't actually happening, right? So right-wing propaganda is really effective in pointing at, like, immigrants or people who don't look like them, right? Or, foreign aid and things like that. But we have to recognize this is not the same Republican Party. So while the United States of America has always been an oppressive body, right, and while these political parties have always kind of paid lip service to people and try to get their vote, while other people are marginalized and things like that, and they haven't done enough, this is not the same Republican Party. It's not. So, to just reduce this down, in my opinion, to both sides kind of suck, Democrats and Republicans are the same, though they both have corporate sponsors. While some of that's true, right, it's deeper than that. It's actually more sinister than that. And what I'll point to, and I've kept pointing to, is that voting conversation, number 2. And let me make it very fucking clear. Voting is not a solution. It's not an answer to our problems. If you think you can just show up once every 4 years, even once every 2 years, for your local elections and be done, that's not enough. You're not doing enough as a person within the society, in my opinion. But again, direct action is going to be a part of this, and there's only one party trying to strip your ability to utilize direct action. All right, Democrats aren't trying to penalize you or make you a felon for having a sit-in at the Capitol. Republicans are doing that. Tennessee, right? Democrats are not trying to,
the guys who raided the Capitol
for protesters and things like that, right? And it's and this is not a promotion of Democrats. It's just a reality of, if you want to change things, you have to analyze your situation. You have to analyze the conditions. You have to analyze the variables, and you have to be strategic. And yes, when I'm presented with evil or super evil, I'm going to choose evil. Not because I promote evil, because I am in a position where there is no opposite choice, and that lesser of the two will provide a climate that is a little bit easier to maneuver in and work against the system. Again, it's not promotion of them. So, I don't fuck with the MAGA blue crowd, right? And I don't even think they're this. It's not even fair to call them that. But, the vote blue matter who. I don't agree with that. Getting their primary the fuck out of the establishment Democrats. but we don't show up to vote, man. Like, we don't show up for the primary process.
No.
So, like, you can't
And
complain.
you got to do that at the
Have
local
people you
level
don't
too.
want. Go ahead. I talked a lot.
We have to take accountability for that, because we don't take enough accountability for us not showing up to the primaries. People bitch and moan all the time about not having progressive candidates. It's like, well, how do you think they get on the ballot? Like, you have to vote them in.
Guys pretty
So,
progressive.
Yeah, it's important to vote. It's the bare minimum, and we can't ignore it. And we can't. We acknowledge that electoralism is not going to save us, but we have to acknowledge that the other side, the fascist side, is voting in every election, because they do have these town halls where they really have just a way to rally up their base. And they were actually telling them before the COVID mask thing, they were like, go to the school boards. They were rallying these people up. Like, they're very follow the leader, you know, kind of people. And so they get really excited because they have a unified base, and their base is hate and fear.
Fear and hate are very powerful motivators.
I think 2 places where we could do a whole lot better, well, maybe 3, our messaging is poor. Like, we need to do something about our messaging because it's not effective. The second thing that we need to do is so the voting matters thing, I've seen several videos today. So I am kind of in the same boat that you are, Matt. Like, I still believe, like, we've got to do our civic duty if that's what we have to do, but that doesn't mean we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. You know, there are, you know, leftists to commie, I hate labels or whatever, but that will say, well, we need to do, we need to do praxis. We need to do mutual aid and stuff like that. Why do the 2 have to be mutually exclusive? Like, why can't you make that part of the local message? If people see you out in your community and you're running for office, or let's say you're supporting a candidate and you're doing food drives or food banks, or you're taking school supplies to children or to your public schools, people see those things and they know who's doing and who's talking. The 2 don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can do both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to me and Matt generally don't disagree on things. He knows more than I do, and I'm freely admit that I learn a lot from him. But you characterize it as evil and super evil, and that's not exactly how I would characterize it, as ineffective and apathetic to evil and super evil. Like, that's I don't think there are certainly Democrats who are not good people and are interested in dirty money and all kinds of bad shit. But there aren't Democrats, in my opinion, who are interested in subverting the will of the people completely. And the Republicans are interested in that.
I do want to answer that, a guy in the chat. You said voting is a waste. Okay, well, that is the system we have, like it or hate it. But I can prove to you that voting is not a waste. If more people would have shown up in the 2016 election, there would be 3 less conservative Supreme Court justices.
Yep.
This wouldn't even be a conversation right now. And we're not just talking about Roe v. Wade. We're talking about other trigger laws that, I mean, up to and including, I think Senator Blunt in Missouri even wants to overturn interracial marriages. So yes, those are going to have real world consequences for women, for LGBTQIA people, for interracial couples. So it's not a waste, and we already saw that. I'm sorry, but I never again want to suffer the consequences that we suffered in 2016 because we were complacent and we thought Hillary was going to win. I'm not doing that again.
I think that voting.
Go ahead, bro. You're good.
I think that voting is actually your most important tool, and you should use it as often as you possibly can, because that is the first line of defense against everything. Against everything, it's the first line of defense, and your last line of defense is your Second Amendment. Like, that's, and there's a whole gray area between here and there that we're not utilizing properly, and because of that, voting is suffering.
Okay, 2 things real quick. Number one, I actually agree. I'd push back a little bit. I'd say your most important tool is how you utilize your capital, because there's nothing more important within capitalism than the almighty dollar. Number 2, Suzanne, you can't prove Hillary would have done differently. We absolutely fucking can. Look, we just, I don't know if they agree, but I just acknowledged, and I'll do it again. When it comes to establishment Democrats and the Republican Party, is there too much overlap in regards to capitalism, in regards to corporation, in regards to military-industrial complex, in regards to police funding, in regards to criminal justice? Yes.
Yes.
So yes, of course, there's too many areas of overlap where there would not be, obvious, sizable difference. But again, we just gave a direct example of the Supreme Court where she absolutely would have done different, and that's going to impact jurisprudence, which is a trickle effect down onto state legislatures and their decisions and things like that for the next 20 years, dude. Like, that's going to have an impact. It might not impact your life. Cool. Congratulations. Good for you. It might not impact my life. Cool. Congratulations. Good for me. It's going to impact someone's life. It's such a myopic and absolute statement to say that voting doesn't matter on any level whatsoever. It is actually indefensible. It is actually truly indefensible.
Marjorie Taylor Greene ran unopposed in her first run, and that's why we have someone who's in Congress saying that Jewish space lasers are what caused blah, blah, blah. She ran unopposed.
Ooh. Well, and also the implications to me, so let's just take that race for example. There was a significant event that happened, right? The DNC was hacked, and also Comey coming out and waffling, that whole situation. That does matter. People say all the time that they don't trust, that's a big thing, right? That they don't trust Hillary and they don't like her, right? That was two of the big things. You can absolutely say that those two situations definitely hit the trust issue and the likability issue with her, but the implications of down ballot alone, because people that would have come out for just her, which I totally disagree with, is ridiculous to do this, but people do it all the time. They would have voted D all the way down the ballot, and that would have had different implications for state and local as well.
Yeah, people go like, "Oh, I don't trust her." My family had said, "I don't trust her because of what her husband did," and I sat with them in October 2016, where on the debate stage, Trump said, "If I get elected, I will nominate pro-life Supreme Court judges." And he also had stated in previous interviews that he believes that people that have abortions should be killed. And so it's like, yeah, when people go, I don't vote for her, there is a part of misogyny that went into the lack of voter turnout. And we have to acknowledge that within our base of Democrats, that there was misogyny that played a role for them not showing up. Because I showed up and I voted for my humanity. And I voted for a candidate that said that they would not appoint pro-life judges. I couldn't put in Harambe because I knew that my right to my body was on the line, and I've lost it in my state.
Well, also, just the thought that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton would have the same policies that's not a thought. Like, that's just a dumb person talking.
Is someone cool? Whoever wants to.
Yeah, I got to go anyway. I got a graduation to get to. So
cool. All right. So later, bro.
Yep. Let's see it.
What up? What up?
What's going on?
Floor is yours. Voting doesn't matter. Let's hear it.
All right. I'm looking at Princeton.edu scholarly article. It's a study that was done about interest groups and if how their vote impacts legislation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read that.
The average citizen, regardless of what we vote for, what is popular, our votes only matter 20% of the time.
Yeah,
it's federal,
I read that too.
Federal and local.
Yeah, I read that too, that study. But what that fails to account for is the fact that when people show up to vote and they show up and vote in the primaries, they can get different people. And also, the people that wanted to get rid of Citizens United, those people elected senators that now put in a bill to get rid of Citizens United, which will remove the amount of power that corporations have to lobby our lawmakers. That was done by people voting for senators. That bill's in Congress right now.
Oh, you don't have to light it. Just leave it in your car.
I don't think the study failed to account for that, though. Specific thing.
the power of local elections to make changes upward, and that will greatly shape our Americans. Yeah, the IPCC.
It accounts for that. It accounts for that, to his point.
Yeah, let me also make the point, like, so we know that, like, Texas's entire energy grid is privatized. At what point can you vote that out of the hands of those private owners? And then at what point can you vote away their ability to lobby in Texas to maintain control over that? They already control it. Like,
I could vote for Beto, who will not take interest groups' money. Yeah, he's a liberal, but he won't have SB8. He wouldn't sign SB8, and he would also stop what's happening in Harris County, which is charging what used to be $5,000 for kilowatt, now $30,000 for a kilowatt in Harris County. That he's allowing that greed to go because of what he said about public emergencies and how much electric companies can charge, because he got a $2 million kickback. So I know Beto
you can
wouldn't
also
take
promote.
it.
And
You can
here's my
also
last
promote
contestation with
progressive.
voting. Because
You could also
people
promote
say
more.
to vote progressives,
Go ahead.
right? Why would I vote for, like, Bernie just on the lines of, like, oh, he can make, like, some things better, but he still voted for, like, the coup in Bolivia. Like, he put yes down. Like, why would I vote for those people, like, who, oh, they might be making life better for Americans, but, like, objectively on the global scale, they don't really give a fuck.
Because of harm reduction. Because I know
I think it's like,
I don't believe that's harm
what's your
reduction.
alternative?
That
So
I
what's your
believe that's harm
alternative
reduction.
solution? You might be annoyed with the progress that's being made, but to deny that over the past several decades that we've made progress, and then also not to acknowledge that even if I acquiesce to your the study that says we only get 20%, that's not nothing. And and just in the example that I gave with the 3 Supreme Court justices, that has real life implications for people. So not voting, would you agree that not voting does have implications for real life in people's real lives?
I mean, you would have to prove to me that voting, like, not voting or voting is actually going to change, like, objectively.
But it
things.
just
I gave the example.
example's there, so I'll give you an example. I'm
no, but okay.
I'll give
like,
you an example.
Think about Biden and Trump right now. Like, what is actually Biden doing that he promised that is, like, objectively different than Trump, other than, like, moving troops to Somalia instead of Iraq?
Talking about 2 different situations with 3 Supreme Court justices that are already in office.
He wants a real life example.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead, and then I'm going to jump in because there's a bit of a conflation going on here. But go ahead.
Well, real life example is in Texas. A woman, she had an abortion. It happened in Texas, and she was charged, but the prosecutors, which are elected, dropped the charges. That was a local choice made by people that voted for someone who believes in the right to choose, and now she's not on trial because of that person that was elected. That's the real life change. And you may not see it up at the presidential seat, but you'll see it in your local city. And
prosecutors are elected?
Yes. So, for example,
the DA
in Philadelphia, Larry Krasner. So, for example, in Philadelphia, Larry Krasner was elected to their as the district attorney, right? And I just did something on this. He literally came in and immediately made it clear that we're going to attack mass incarceration within our jurisdiction there. We're going to attack mandatory minimum sentencing, things like that, right? We're going to attack the prison pipelines and stuff like that. So when he had prosecutors within his DA's office that weren't on board with that, he fired 31 of them, right? He immediately released a list that highlighted 29 cops who were on a do not call list in reference to them having such poor credibility and such poor records that they couldn't be trusted on the stand, right? Some of them have actually been involved, like in the Meek Mill case, for example. He came in, released a memo, which obviously doesn't have power in itself, but released a memo that's going to dictate what the office was going to look like and how they're going to operate going forward, right? So, for example, if you wanted to justify putting someone in jail or prison, you had to write out the actual costs. What are the costs that going to be? How's this going to be a burden on taxpayers? What is the financial implications of this, right? He wanted to promote the idea of his prosecutors pushing for more diversion programs than pushing people into jail or prison. He immediately instated a policy where anyone who was picked up for like marijuana or shit like that
they're not going to get charged. Like, it's not a thing. We're not prosecuting that. So you're telling me for the people impacted by that within Philadelphia, doesn't matter.
And they're elected. The prosecutor is John Coizot, the guy in Texas, and he's up for re-election in 2022.
I'm
there's
trying
examples of
what's
this.
the core contradiction of this system? Is it the fact that we don't have like people in power who
I want you to answer
vote,
the question for starters,
Yeah,
man.
answer the
I'm gonna be kind of an ass, dude, because you've been in my comments and you've been kind of full of it, bro. I want
No,
you to acknowledge.
I'll admit that will arbitrarily change someone's life, like, but it won't change anything objectively about this system at the end of the day. It's like I was just saying about why would I vote for Bernie if he still votes for death sometimes, right? Like,
And that's
You
fair.
just want
That's a
the
fair
end of the
question.
movie.
So
You
that's
just
a
want
fair
the end of the movie,
question.
the big show.
Well, I want to acknowledge that one because that's a fair question. Because that's something I've had to kind of ask myself too, bro. Because like I think, and I'll agree with you. The way I look at this is I consider United States politics and politicians and their impact on us here within the states, and then you have to consider their impact on the globe, right? Because we're a superpower and we do impact the globe, right? That's totally fair. And a realistic answer to your question, I don't think we have the politicians in place right now who are going to really give a fuck about the globe, because we don't have a public that really gives a fuck about the globe. So if we can't even care about our own young, we can't even care about our own unhoused, we can't even care about our own like returning veterans, which is a complicated conversation, right? We can't even care about our disabled. We can't care about our own here. It's not realistic to think that we're going to give a fuck about how we impact the globe. You have to build class consciousness, and I think we do that by changing what conversations look like at the local level, implementing progressives who are going to shift what policy looks like, and it's a slow fucking process, which is not a good enough answer for someone who's being harmed in Bolivia, in Iran, in the Middle East, in Northern Africa. Like you're right, like on that aspect, but it's not played like that. Sadly, that would be my response.
Well,
and that's
the
what I'll
saying
say.
of
It's
don't let
at the same
perfect be the
time, like,
enemy of good. If you're acknowledging that these make changes. So another example that I was going to
what
give
is
is
good
Michael
in
Tubbs
this like instance though? Because
well,
Bernie
because
supported
we just gave you. Hold on, I'm going to explain that to you.
Enbridge at
Stop. We give you tangible.
I'm going to explain that to you. Okay. Yes, that is very bad. However, Matt gave an example. Quilting gave an example. And I'm giving you another example. Michael Tubbs, he's the mayor of Stockton, California. He implemented UBI. So we talked about it earlier, how we could do things in our local, Matt, I think, said it. You could do something at the local scale, prove that it works, and implement it broadly, right? So that's an example of something working locally that's having a real impact on real lives. That, if we prove it to its success, could help more people. Now, would you say that if you had a choice and it was, we can get UBI for everybody, but we would have to vote would have to vote for somebody who voted for that, or no UBI at all, which would you vote for? Or which would you choose, let's say not even vote. Which would you choose? Would you rather have something or
this
nothing?
is the problem with this system. Like, I didn't vote in my local election. Like,
I just am asking it. Would you rather have something or nothing?
I would rather have neither one of them. I don't want those options.
You'd rather have nothing?
If I'm not voting,
it doesn't matter if you want those options. Those may be the only two options we end up having.
That is fundamentally a problem.
Listen, I'm not on your side.
That's why I'm
not on your side. I think we could be doing a lot better. But nobody on this planet is a perfect human being, and you're asking for a politician to be perfect when, like Matt,
I want a politician to actually represent my ideals, and until that is actually happening, I am not voting.
Shit in one hand,
what you're saying is I would sacrifice
another. Let me pause real quick. Is it Cezanne? Is that how I say it?
Yeah.
And like I'm not like asking this I got you. But like, so what do you think? What do you think? Some things like we could all be doing like that would be more conducive to changing the system. Like, what are some things you think people should be doing like in terms of praxis, direct action, all that jazz?
Yeah. Well, we could be actually like community building, right? We could be like, for lack of a better words, initiating the mass line in our community. We could be committing class suicide and actually putting our capital towards collective power instead of going by this individualist lifestyle and just saying, oh, voting is going to be the thing that gets us out, right? We should be committing class suicide and building up collective powers. No, it's not a straw man, because
it is, because no one said not to vote.
Everyone's here, at least on this panel, everyone on this panel has made it clear that voting is probably like bare minimum action.
Yeah.
And there are other things that we have to be doing. If like I actually said it, I think about 5 minutes ago directly, that if you're just voting, that's not enough. So again,
I mean, okay, but it's not a straw man just to say
It is,
that, like,
because
no,
we said voting
it's
is
not
the minimum.
because okay, if y'all agree that voting is the bare minimum shouldn't be the thing that is second on your list. That is.
Well, you're not even doing the bare
right?
minimum, buddy.
I'm not even going to say.
And again, if it's bare minimum,
hold on a second. Is that what we're gonna do? Like we're gonna like
no,
put,
but again, if it's the bare minimum, like I was just saying, why would I vote for someone who actively is like Bernie Sanders supported Standing Rock, like he supported Enbridge at Standing Rock? Why would I vote for him when he votes for people to come shoot at me? Like I don't care about that.
That comes from a very privileged place for.
Hold on a second. Wait a second.
It's not a privileged place.
You just disproved yourself, though, bro. This is the point. Voting's not a fucking purity contest, my man. I agree with you. I'd rather have someone to vote for that actually represents our interests as a group of people, as a collective of workers, as a collective
How many of you
citizens
put your capital towards collective power? Like you're up here hating on people who hate on voting. But like,
I don't think that's a fair assessment.
We just talked about it. We just talked. This is my point. You non-vote motherfuckers don't actually want to listen, because we will acknowledge every point you make about direct action, about trying to fucking make collective action, about trying to put resources into your community, right? About trying to fucking do things outside the system. We will acknowledge every aspect of that. But you just talked about shooting protesters, but you don't want to acknowledge that only one party is going to actually try to attack protesters in terms of legislation.
No, Dems actively support legislation that allows them to attack. Dems voted for the bill here in my city that decriminalized but also allowed them to attack homeless people.
Come on, let us say something.
You are mischaracterizing people on this chat, and I'm not trying to be rude, but you have very much talked over. So you did Yes, you did.
Yes, you did. Let us talk.
You did.
Don't act
what
like
I'm going to tell you was, were you on? I'm not acting like a victim. I'm saying you Listen, I can speak for myself. I don't need you to speak for me. So what I'm going to tell you or ask you is, were you on earlier when I said that if anybody on the left, right? Because the left is a very wide big tent party or organized group, let's say. Were you on earlier when I said that progressive candidates could be doing more in their communities and showing the people in their communities, by having those candidates go and volunteer at soup kitchens and food banks, and offering to collect and donate and get supplies for school children and things like that? Were you in here when I said that? Were you in here when I said that?
I want to say something before he grandstands again. Beto came to Texas when we were dying, when my senator left. So, and also you basically claim that we're talking about we're only doing electoralism. That's where you're misrepresenting us. I asked you, are you in a union? Are you forming a union at your workplace? Do you donate to mutual aids? What are 3 mutual aids in your metroplex? Have you donated to any mutual aids? Have you volunteered any time in mutual aids? Or are you only here going, voting doesn't matter? Like, you're talking about building community, but communities already have mutual aids set up. You don't need to go make your own.
And you also accuse both of us of not doing that. You also accuse both of us of not doing that, and you don't know what we are doing, so that's unfair.
This is the difference between people who actually know what class suicide is and people who just know what liberal opportunism is. Because at the end of the day, I do show up to my food kitchen. I do show up for people in my community when they need it. I show up to, but at the end of the day, that's not what it takes to be someone who commits class suicide, right? And if you're going to say that that's it, then you didn't read enough. I'm going to say you don't know. You need to listen to Fred Hampton a little better. You need to go back and actually know what class interest means and what our classes are, right? This isn't about if you're helping the local soup kitchen, right? This is about, are you building collective power? This isn't about if I voted for blah blah blah, because at the end of the day, I don't care about lesser of two evils. That's why I don't vote, because I don't want to say I get arbitrarily better stuff at the expense of like the homeless in my community, or at the expense of Palestinians, or at the expense of people in Somalia. Like, at the end of the day, that's not me, because my class interests align with those people, align with the poor of my community and the poor of the globe, and not with the middle class. And so
in addition to harming them, you would also not vote in order to do further harm to communities like women, LGBTQIA people, interracial couples and stuff like
No,
that. That's
it's
what
literally.
you're saying.
I'm gonna say it again,
You would
because
do
all these
further
bills.
damage.
Find me a politician who isn't sneaky with what they support. Like again, like I was saying,
I'm gonna tell you by not
the
voting.
A
Democrats
real
actively,
example, though.
they made a bill that decriminalized a bunch of drugs, but in the same exact bill that they wrote and signed, it made camping illegal. Like you can't. It says in it you can't sleep outside with a blanket. How is that harm reduction?
You want to talk about
How
camping,
is that
but you're
harm
not
reduction? It's helping a
acknowledging
bunch
the
of.
harm.
It's helping
You're
a
not
shit ton of addicts.
I
But
understand
it's
you want to
literally
frame this
hurting the poor.
argument. I understand you want to frame this argument about one thing, but I did ask you a question that you did not answer. Would you think it's okay, or you would support not just doing the harm that's already being done by imperfect politicians, but you would also support people not voting to do further harm? We saw the direct implications of the 2016 vote in those 3 conservative justices alone. Look what the implications are. They're very serious.
I want to bring up the 2018 vote.
Under
Wait,
the
I want to bring.
Wait. When Congress was majority Democrat and we had a Democrat majority court and we had a Democrat in the presidency, we didn't see any amount of harm reduction really be done. Like in a
and I believe
objective,
that
like
it was
macro
too late for
sense.
that.
And this is what I say, like it's not harm reduction if they're harming another group still. It's like it's literally not.
2018
I'm not
midterms.
saying
Did you vote?
harm
That's
reduction.
my
All I'm
question.
just trying to get you.
Season
No, it's like it's
2018
I
midterms,
like I
did
was
you
just
vote?
explaining to you. It's literally not harm reduction if they're bombing people still. Like
Can I-
I
it's
didn't
arbitrary.
say harm reduction. You're
I
trying
said
to
it.
have the conversation framed. Okay, so
No, but
what
you're
I
trying to
am
have the
asking you,
conversation
you
framed that
still
my
won't
lack
have
of a
the.
vote
I'm
is
talking
somehow
about
me
the 2016
supporting
election
not
because
them
I
just
acknowledge
like
that
not
it's
the harm reduction, right? You're trying to say that me not voting is me supporting something. It's actually the opposite. It's me
2018,
not
did you
supporting.
vote? Did you vote in 2018 midterms?
I literally wasn't even old enough to vote in
Okay, so I'm
2018.
gonna let you know. In 2018, in Texas, the Senate race for the Senate seat, Ted Cruz versus Beto O'Rourke, it was the closest race since 1978 in our state. Ted Cruz won by 50.9% and Beto lost with 48.3%. That is by how many people voted.
Yeah, but
We
okay,
only
to be
needed
fair,
200,000
these
more.
aren't responses to what he's saying, guys, because like, and I want to let Tiff make her point because I kind of thought I see where she was going, but like, you gotta understand, and I don't, if I get something wrong here, Susan, like obviously step in. I don't want to fucking tell your views and get them wrong. But his point is, there's no like noticeable difference in a lot of these key areas in terms of like harm reduction, like versus Republican policy and Democrat policy. And I would agree, again, like dude. So I'm in Sacramento, right? I'm in California. You have Democratic like politicians who are on the wrong side of this conversation about the unhoused, right? 100%. So when I'm saying harm reduction, it's not in the sense that Democrats are improving things like marginally. It's that while they still are harmful with their policies, especially from a macro view, right? If you include the globe, I think Republicans are far more harmful, and they do create climates that are even less conducive to trying to implement the various things we're trying to do. So it's not. So maybe harm reduction might be the wrong word, but again, I'm gonna pick someone slapping me over someone, closing up their fists and throwing 3 to my eyeball, like, and maybe that's flawed logic, but.
Yeah, I'm gonna duck. That's
well,
the difference.
I'm just saying you can't. Okay, so the reason why I said it comes from a privileged place. Are you any of the following communities? Are you
I
part of the
identify as an African.
women's? Okay. Are you part of the women's community? Are you part of the LGBTQI community? Are you part of an interracial couple?
My father's white. My mother is African indigenous.
Okay. So what I am saying is that implication, if let's say the 14th Amendment is moot, the right to privacy is gone, and your state, the state that your parents live in, decides to overturn the legality of interracial marriages, is that going to have a direct impact on your parents?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Listen, we are on the same side. I think politicians are shitty, and there's not a perfect one of them out there. But what I am saying is, when it comes down to real life implications for people, saying that I'm not going to vote because there's an imperfect person over here and they're doing something wrong does not acknowledge that if you did vote, you could prevent something happening to another community. In California, they have.
That's the game,
so I went
though.
there for.
Don't you realize that yet? Like, that's the game that they play in this system. Like, and that's why
Okay,
I
but
want
you
a
can
perfect
do.
politician.
I
Is
have.
because they actively will take.
There's never
They'll
going to
let
be.
you.
I know that's
They'll
like
let you vote
I'm.
until someone runs on the
How old are
communist
you?
ticket, like they did back in the 30s, and before
That's
that,
not
like
going
there
to
was a
happen, at
communist
least
ticket.
in this decade. I promise you
Well,
that.
okay, then you won't see me voting this decade.
Okay, but that's what I'm trying to explain to you. You are, I mean, you're kind of living in a little bit of a fantasy land here. I'm more of a realist person. Like
I
I care
feel like my
about.
position is more the realist position because again, you're falling for the game.
I don't.
You're falling
Okay, then how are you
their
going to
game.
make? How are you going to create a communist government in this decade?
Wait,
How are you going to do that right
all of a
now
sudden?
and bring people?
Because you said it's the only time you'll vote.
You're being unrealistic, so I'm
No,
being unrealistic
that was never
with you.
that's never what I said though. I never said like let's build a
Okay,
communist government
you
this
said
decade.
you said you're not going to vote, so you will do so people. You and people like you will do damage to people in marginalized communities that have no protection right now as a direct result of people not showing up to the polls
If
in
I would have
2016.
voted Democrat,
I agree
I
with
would have
you.
actively signed my name on violence against homeless people in my city at the expense of saying like, oh, I'm not harming the addicts though. So again, you're just falling for this system.
So
you're not actually doing it.
I don't think
so you would rather do harm to. I mean, it just makes no sense. It just makes no sense. There are
you're
people.
falling for the system. Let's harm some
example,
people
bro.
and not harm others. That's not
let
what
me
I'm
give you an
about. Let's just
example.
harm nobody.
Let me give you an example. And again, this isn't like meant to like dissuade you or persuade you. It's just kind of, like I see your point here, Cezanne. So like when I decided, I had never voted for a Democrat up until this last election. All right, because I live in California, so it always goes blue in national elections. So I have the privilege of kind of doing whatever the hell I want, right? I voted for Biden despite the fact that his foreign policy and his beliefs, and it was all Obama, their beliefs on Iran and some of the things they're trying to implement, I think are harmful. I don't fuck with it. I don't support it, right? Like it directly impacts my people, in my opinion. But the reason I kind of like rolled my sleeves up and got them dirty. So yeah, you're right. I agree. Like my hands are dirty when I place a vote for someone and their name's attached to policy that's going to harm people, right? Whether you like it or not, you're attached to that. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
So my thing is, I can either sit it out and wait for the proper candidate, or I can still try and put people in place who are going to be a little more conducive to what I'm doing. Is it enough? Fuck no, not even close. Is it like the answer? Fuck no, it's not the answer. But like if I see a politician, for example, who's serious about electoral reform in terms of like getting ranked choice voting, right? Or like trying to take a look at gerrymandering and trying to look at those things, like, you know what? That's a pretty important issue and it could return some power to us, and it's important to get that conversation going. And I'm gonna suck it up and vote for him. I think the problem is we're having conversations with different groups, right? So like my issue with the no vote rhetoric isn't like with someone who doesn't want to vote personally. In the end, you got to do what you got to do. We all have our experiences, right? My issue is making claims that it has no impact. That's an absolute statement, right? It has an impact on some level. Maybe we don't get our return on investment that we want out of it. That's totally fair, right? But that's when I think everyone in this conversation acknowledges we got to do a lot more than just like the vote blue no matter who crowd that thinks you can just show up for elections that's going to solve issues. It's not.
I agree with that, and I also concede that if we like really organize and we vote at like a local level, that will have a bigger impact than any amount of people participating in a federal election.
100%.
Well, and
I will concede
and
that
I'm
point.
for, and I want to say that I am for that, or I wouldn't be running locally. So I just by petition will be a committee person. What?
Made that sausage.
Sorry, I was talking to my aunt.
Oh, you're good, man. No worries.
There's more. There's a couple left.
My frustration is just where I mean, we've seen the implications of the 2016 election. I maybe felt a little more like you, and believe me, Biden was the very last motherfucker I ever would have voted for. Like, I pretty much supported and phone banked for nearly everybody else, because to me, he was not anywhere close to what I would have wanted to vote for in the primary. I don't think that we're going to get a perfect person because we're all imperfect people. That's just never going to happen. I just think that's where it gets unrealistic. But we can run progressive candidates locally, and they don't become a national sensation overnight, at least not usually. Sometimes, you know, you have somebody like a Beto that catches fire or something like that, but not always. But there are people like the gentleman that Matt suggested or mentioned in Philadelphia. There's, you know, the one that Quilting mentioned. There's the mayor of Stockton, Michael Tubbs, who is literally implemented UBI, and he's proving it to its success. That is something that can help the communities that you were just saying you cared about. That could help them, right?
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be critical of the other things that they're voting for. Like if it's UBI, but at the expense of what other community? If it's at the expense of another community, I am not voting for it, because that is not gonna, like, like Michael Prenny famously says, right? The third world is being overexploited by us, and I want to
Don't bring
lower
Michael
that
into this.
I want to lower that exploitation at any cost. Like, that is my prerogative, because we here are living on top of the gold mound, right? We're like, I've been poor. I know people who are homeless. I know people who are poor at their lowest level, and like them getting better at the expense of some kid in Palestine is not my prerogative. Me getting better at the expense of a kid in Yemen is not my prerogative. Like, at the
Did
end
Michael
of the day,
Parenti say not to vote?
and so I'm pretty sure he said something about local elections and stuff like that.
You
But
can pull it up because I think he's more.
You could hear his all opinions. I'm not forming my entire opinion.
I've heard a lot of his speeches, but I don't think he would agree with you.
I think he would on that part. I mean, and to an extent, there's something I push back a little bit on, and I could be wrong here. But it goes, and I'm repeating myself because I already said this, but the reality is, like, we can't even get shit right within the states, right? In terms of like how we should, like we don't have like human rights established for people here, like in terms of equity and all that jazz. You know what I'm saying? I think, and I hope I'm wrong about this. Like, I really hope I'm wrong. I think it's unrealistic, as fucked as it is, to expect us to be able to significantly alter our imperialism, how that impacts the globe, if we can't even alter how we impact our people here.
Yep.
Well, that's true, and I will say my biggest support is of land back. Right? If you have land that's in an indigenous nation, give your land back. You're all on stolen land. Give your land back. You wanna prevent the Republican senators from being able to ban abortions in your state? Give your land back to your local indigenous nation. They don't believe that abortion should be illegal. And if they had more land in their nation, they would be able to build a hospital. If they had more funding coming into their nation, they would be able to build a hospital. Land back. So if we're really going to talk about voting, let's talk about honoring the treaties, right? Let's talk about honoring the treaties. That will get us what we want quicker than voting will. 90 feet from all bodies of water, all white people would be removed.
We can walk into bubblegum.
So I'm going to give you the.
That would do more for our voting and for our logistics in this country and it would help with climate exactly than voting any amount of wishy-washy, two-sided.
And I pulled
up. And I'm just saying personally, I won't believe in that. Like, yeah.
So let me give you an example of this then. So, because I agree, land back and reparations, right? And I think we both agree that the parties as currently situated would never like get on board with that shit, right?
Nope.
So, do you know that only 5% of Republicans support the idea of reparations? 50% of Democrats support the idea of reparations. So, like, to get ourselves to a position where the public, because like you have to have enough public support for these things to then want to turn it into action, to kind of shake the foundations, to then act in a way that's going to give us the outcomes we want. Fair?
That's fair.
So again, wouldn't it be better to try and put, even if we're not getting what we want, wouldn't it be better to kind of suck it up and put people in place who are going to be more receptive to the conversation, right, at the state level, which will then turn into a greater dialogue at the public level, which will then shift more people over to get towards these things?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it makes sense in practice, but like there's also other ways to just increase public knowledge of things.
No doubt.
Like that.
Yeah, no doubt about it, for sure.
There's
So,
also implications.
well,
So, like Oklahoma right now, their Supreme Court wants to pull back part of its historic rulings for Native rights just purely based
Yeah.
off the abortion issue, because the threat was there that, oh well, we'll just start offering abortions on the reservation. That's how we'll circumvent that state's restrictive abortion laws. But look what's in
Texas has
danger
been
now
fighting
because of that.
ICWA for like 2 years
Okay,
now, 3 years now.
okay, but I'm just using this example because I'm always careful of that, just because of the implications of what's happening to the indigenous communities right now in Oklahoma. The Supreme Court wants to pull back on its historic ruling for Native rights. That covers a lot of other things. So
Yeah, I mean
there can be
and this is where I
negative.
think I would probably be more inclined to vote if white people like specifically were aware of things until like like if white people could prove to me that you were actually aware of the house burning down and not like just when shit affects you, like I would probably be more inclined to vote. But like it doesn't matter how much we make people aware. Like I was just saying, like a lot of these things with indigenous people have been major problems for like decades now. With black
For
people that
centuries,
have
bro.
been,
Since
yeah,
day
for
one to the
centuries.
point.
Like
Yeah.
it's like
And I
I want
1,000%
people to be
agree with
aware
you.
before of the fact. Like and then I might be,
I
but like if I have to wait 3 years for like one person in my community to figure out that this, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is why I believe in collective power over federal elections, and also
well,
like the electoral college is just nonsense to me.
Well, yeah, in the Electoral College, you need to look into the IPCC vote compact that's happening for the popular vote thing to take over. It's a compact between states. But when you talked about the crux of the whole thing and why you were brought up here was you don't believe in voting. And you brought up Michael Parenti, and you brought up great points about people need to care about these really important issues. And if they showed some care for the communities that are not a part of these people that aren't voting, then maybe you would care to vote. But when you talked about Parenti, he does disagree with not voting. He says in a paper, is Nicaragua more democratic than the United States, comparing the voter turnouts? He said most people in the United States find that, so it said one crucial measurement of open political systems is the popular participation. That most voting studies in the United States and elsewhere find that non-voters show a degree of alienation from the process, and that they believe that voting is not a means of effecting change. And the U.S. people often fail to see a meaningful choice in a candidate presented to them. This view is also of a surprising number of Americans that do vote. Therefore, like, we need to look at, yes, there is alienation in the voting, because right now you're actually describing the alienation in the voting. You're saying, I don't see people caring about all these other policies.
Well, and I do want to
Well,
acknowledge.
yeah, I mean,
I don't think it's
I
fair.
said Michael Parenti
He did say
before
he's
voting.
not Michael Parenti, right? He did say like,
Yeah, I did say I don't form my opinions off that man. I love him and I appreciate him, but yeah.
I do want to acknowledge what you said, and I'm going to call in people that look like me a little bit. That is the frustration when this entire conversation on Roe began. And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. You may have not been in the chat, but what I said is the reason why that politicians are trying to convince white people now to go along and take crumbs and things like that is because the Black, brown, and indigenous communities have been fighting for civil rights for a long time. So they already know you won't go. They already know you will not go back. And for a lot of white people, this is their very first go around with having to fight for any of their rights. So I totally acknowledge that. And you best believe I hold people accountable on this app when they do shit like that, when they don't want to acknowledge that there has been plenty of other people that got in the fight well before them, and we should stop and listen to them first. I do that on a regular basis.
I hate to be that guy, but I haven't had breakfast yet even because this went a lot longer than I thought. So I just want to say thank you to Quilting. I hadn't met before. Appreciate you chopping in. Tiff, I really appreciate your contributions. And Czen, I'll actually enjoy this conversation because I think we made more headway than our little BS comments back and forth together. So
yeah, for real.
Yeah, thanks, y'all.
I
It was
do
great
appreciate
talking to all y'all.
Yeah.
And I do get where you're coming from, Czen. You made a lot of great points, and I do acknowledge that the caring, it's a moment where people are caring that haven't cared before, but it's a moment to galvanize those people that didn't care before.
Yeah, the last thing I'm gonna say is that's why I do want to make it clear when I have these voting conversations, it is geared towards white people because like we kind of I try to acknowledge maybe I didn't do a good job of it. Like if there is someone who's black, indigenous, person of color, and you've been infringed upon by this system, you've been harmed by this system. Like I can't tell you like okay yeah fuck your lived experience and fuck that feeling right and then like go vote anyways. Um, but I still try and take the conversation to like a more strategic point that impacts everyone. But again, like yeah, if someone doesn't fuck with the system for some of the reasons you laid out or some of the experiences you laid out, like I don't want to be seen as pushing back against that. So I understand that, man. So that's about it. What you guys have last word before I call it?
See y'all in the future.
Cool.
Take it easy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was great talking to you.
Later, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for hopping in the live, guys.
Have a good day.
I might hop on later today, so y'all have a good one. Oh shit! Well, I got y'all here. Check out the YouTube page. We go on Monday and Friday nights, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. So if you enjoy conversations like this, check us on YouTube. Just click on my bio, link tree. It'll take you there. Subscribe on YouTube. Like we've had some pretty cool ones. Like last night we did a little panel on abortion and Roe v. Wade. Last Monday we had Micah Valentine on, and we talked about like leftism and some of that. We're gonna have him back on. The week before that we had Thomas the Villain Bishop. So you guys should check it out. And if you think you could take part in those conversations, hop in the comments and whatnot. Maybe we can get you in there. So appreciate y'all, and you guys have a good one.